there are circuits that around the world you get an understanding of what makes them tick. This one of those tracks that when it comes to the other side of the world, there is a fable that comes along with this place. 2 long straights, one up the mountain and one down it, known as Conrod. This a track which is feared time and time again. Public road here, the mountain road here of Bathurst in New South Wales in Australia, and we are getting set for NXTGP GT Endurance Championship. It's round 2, and we're getting ourselves set for 3 hours of racing here at Mount Panorama, Bathurst. I'm Jake Sperry here, along with Dennis Vierenha here along to give a huge amount of great racing here on the horizon. We're not a million miles away from qualifying taking its hold, but Dennis, as we sit and note what these drivers have to deal with over the course of this championship, it's a lot easier of a challenge than what they had just last month when they had to take themselves over to Petit Le Mans and get their action sorted over at the wonderful Road Atlanta. So today, a little bit more of an easier challenge in terms of time, but definitely not easier in terms of track.
Yeah, absolutely, Jake. Welcome indeed also from my side. Yeah, absolutely, as I said, it's going to be a hell of a race because the Mount Panorama especially is a very legendary circuit. Actually, a circuit that's kind of like the Nordschleife, except a little bit shorter, but still very challenging indeed. And also, I think, of course, we're going to have to go to Spa-Francorchamps for round 3. That's also going to be a very, very exciting circuit for a very exciting championship, the Endurance Championship here at NXTGP. Yeah, I don't know how it's with you, Jake, but I'm very, very excited for this qualifying because it's going to be a 2-lap shootout qualifying for all of our drivers. And that's definitely going to be an exciting thing because, yeah, the walls are so close to the circuit, and especially in the second part of the sector, that's where you need to have big balls.
Well, you need to make sure that you've got yourself going as close to the barriers as you can to maximize the path of least resistance. I always imagine the run over the top of the mountain over Peterbrook skyline to be that of a whitewater rapid that you have to try and work your way down. It is, of course, those 2 laps available to set in qualifying, so drivers will have their best driver in to try and make that work, and there will be talks about who can manage to keep their form as far as racing action goes, with Unlucky with the Who's then taking the win over at round 1 at Road Atlanta, with Full Gas Motorsports Green in second, and the number 8 FZR SimSport team finishing off then in 3rd position there. It does open up a little bit of an effort for drivers to go, okay, this is what the form book looks like. More drivers here today for round 2 looking to make this challenge, and as we take a little look on how the practice times looked out there overall, we're just about, I would say, 7 minutes away from the end of practice finding its hold. It is a case of who has been managing themselves and doing what with their practice. We've got a wide range of paces out there, but for the moment it's about who's got a car that works underneath them. Lukas Filipkowski we have on screen at the moment in the number 8 FZR SimSport car that finished 3rd last time out, currently 3rd at the moment in practice on a 2:02.7. But as we know, Dennis, it's always going to be a few different things that are practiced within a practice session. Some look at trying to get their long run stint sorted, some are looking at getting their qualifying sorted, so the paces are always a little bit circumspect every time we look at it.
Yeah, absolutely, and definitely in a 3-hour race, qualifying is not the end if you qualify, let's say, without the top, outside of the top 10, because there's all to fight for as Filipkowski goes around and hits the car and hits the barriers, because that's something you can do now for practice. Of course, when you do that in the race, then you're gonna have some different problems.
You absolutely are, and it is going to be a long day if you find the barriers early in terms of what this race is, because we do not have any fast repairs available. If the car hits the wall, that is that. There is nothing that you can do. Noah Stefan then putting the pressure down out there, and here's something that I think is going to be very interesting to how they go about this race, and focusing here with the car 8th overall at the moment, the Turbo Toaster, which found a retirement in the opening round of the championship. you can, in theory, do this race with just one driver. It is expected that you will switch the driver and go to at least 2, but if you're really trying to be brave about it, you can have as many as 8 drivers in the car.
Yeah, definitely. Now I think that's going to be a little bit too much drivers in one car, but still, if you do it on your own, 3 hours at Bathurst on your own, yeah, I think you're going to be quite sweaty if you're going to get out of the car. Even though for most of us here in the Netherlands, it's not that warm anymore, luckily, but still, it's going to be quite a fight with you, the car, and the track.
And this track is going to be one which just opens up so many difficult corners. The cutting there, turn 4, out on track and then running up the hill towards Griffin's Mount is going to be of important focus out there, as there is the number 11 of the Unlucky with the Hose racing car, and Jeffrey Roos, who is there currently in the car at this stage of practice and just looking to get the car into an operating window, very much there with, very similar to BWT colours, and overshooting on the brakes, maybe just grabbing a little bit too much turn into turn 3 that leads into 4. It's going to make life very difficult for a number of drivers as they work through, and a number, worth keeping in mind, of Porsches here today. So it looks like the Porsches are going to be one of the cars of choice for many a driver, many a team. A couple of Aston Martins for the Arekanu team, who are out there making a lot of noise, but a good mix. But today it's about drivers who I think, and teams who are wanting to have a little bit more downforce available to them. There is Wout van Kruijsen then for Shivlak Racing 023, the 88 car, to make it a bit more confusing, tags the wall there at 2.
Yeah, and it's something you can do now in practice. It's also about getting the maximum out of your car, especially now. I think we're going to get around the qualifying laps where people are going to push more and more with their car. Yeah, and if you push too much, you will hit the wall. We see, of course, Wout van Kruijsen who did the same thing with his BMW. Yeah, it's something that, especially for our drivers right now, is quite challenging. We have to see where they're going to stand, especially in the qualifying later on in a couple of minutes.
In-sim time is ticking over towards 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and at least for the moment, as far as they stand in terms of weather conditions, it is bright and glorious sunshine. They don't have much to worry about here today, so that at the moment is a nice 21C in sim right now, but it's a very hot 44 degrees track temperature, so it is a sweltering, baking circuit out there at the moment, Dennis, and the reason why these drivers are going to struggle into some of these corners is the fact that that track is hot, that track is slippery, but that track induces a fair bit of understeer at the moment, so they're going to have to really work right now to give as much as they can to make sure that they are keeping out of trouble through these sections and relying on getting as much rotation through the car as possible in the corners.
Yeah, and we are watching with Amanditis, and who's driving a Porsche. And Porsche, of course, naturally itself already has some understeer, especially when the car is getting lighter and lighter. Don't forget, the car has the fuel tank on the front side of the car, and that's especially something when you go to the S's, that's going to be a thing. Of course, we know iRacing, we know with the cut tracks, and it's something that also drivers have to watch out for, because if you do too many, then you'll have a drive-through penalty.
Yeah, you've got to play within the lines here today. This is going to be one of those circuits where I think it's going to have less of a factor than it will do at some others. Now, they do have 25 incident points available to them before a drive-through penalty comes into play, and then disqualification comes at 35 incident points out there. So finding yourself in between the lines is going to be even more important over 3 hours, because that roughly gives you about 8 incident points an hour, which is twice as strict as what you normally find in an iRacing normal session out there, as Tobias de Rompf then pulls the car back then into the pits. And we take a look at what happened to Luc van Wijngaarden here, going off the road at McPhillamy Park, just about skating out of trouble in that Ferrari, and that could have been so much worse over that section, as the checkered flag is out in practice, which means we will shift over to qualifying. But I think that is the most important enduring message there, that McPhillamy Park is one of those corners you want to chuck it in, but you want to hold on to it as much as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. As we see, qualifying is going to be held over 10 minutes. It's quite a long track, of course, don't forget that. Track is around 6.2 kilometers long, with a lot of corners. As Luc van Wijngaarden goes out right now, track who has, of course, in total of 23 corners. 23 corners that these drivers have to master during the qualification.
Yeah, and those corners will be flying at them thick and fast when they take the mountain road up and over the crest here and trying to get tyre temperature up into the tyres. Because they've only got here, Dennis, 2 laps to get themselves up to temperature, and the way over the last year or so that the iRacing tyre model has developed over the GT3 category, it does mean now that you need temperature in those tyres and you need them in quick.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see who's going to get pole position. We're going to know that in just a couple of minutes, of course. Tobias de Rompf, who was quickest in practice. Let's see what he can do. Of course, now it's all about full pull, full gas. And let's see what he's going to do, because one thing to have the quickest time in practice, to have it now with all the power that you need in this McLaren to get another qualification pole position. Let's see what Tobias de Rompf can do.
Well, there is a driver who wants to pull his team right up to the top in the number 7 FZR SimSport. Of course, it was the number 8 FZR SimSport team that got themselves the result that they wanted, a 3rd place at the opener, so that they're making their first start of the season. And if they can get that second team, quote unquote, up there in terms of pace, that'll be everything that you want and then some. Working through down the hill over to the Forest Elbow. It descends down the hill aggressively, and that Falcon barrier on the outside really does stare at you off of the exit of the corner. So the charge down the hill along Conrod heads over to the fastest corner in Australian sim racing. That, of course, is the Chase, and already clicking over 260 kilometers an hour.
As we switch to the helicopter view here, we can see the next couple of corners coming in. We're now at the final sector, almost ready to go to start-finish for starting the lap for Tobias de Rompf. Let's see what he can do in that number 7 McLaren. Just 2 more corners to go. Excuse me, 1 more corner to go. No, he tracks Dennis. And then we go to start-finish. Let's see what Tobias de Rompf can do on his way on Mount Panorama.
Well, turn 1 is Hell's Corner, and it's probably one of the easier corners out there, just a 90-degree left-hander, and you've got to be very careful about the curb on the outside. This is where the power is going to be important along this straight. Running the McLaren, not many McLarens being run over the course of today, but up and over this little ridge before heading over to turn number 2, which is, of course, the quarry corner. So you've got to work hard through turn number 2, maximize the exit there, and now you're starting to understand where the mountain is. Turn and brake at the same time, the hardest skill in all of motorsport. There through the cutting at turns 3 and 4, and then over at 5, you head over to Griffin's Mount, turns 6 and 7. Now you're in the thralls of the mountain proper, and these 3 left-hand bends set you up for the middle of the lap then as you go through Solomon Park, and now you're looking around at McPhillamy here, this fast left-hander, and now getting all of the drive over the top of the hill at Peter Brock's Skyline, a 9-time winner of the Bathurst 1000, and now trying to work hard here, getting a little bit shallow going through the Big Dipper. That's going to cost a bit of time here for Tobias de Rompf, and this now into the Forest Elbow, slightly misses the apex again, so this isn't without mistake. Over the course of this lap, there's been a couple areas over the course of this run where it has been a little bit circumspect, that there have been some tough watches over left, right, up and down in terms of this track. Climbing over the crest again, down the hill through Conrod, now into the Chase, and looking for that braking zone. 272 down to just 112 kilometers an hour, looking to get through the corner. Unlucky with the who's quickest at the moment. Full Gas Motorsports Green go quicker though by about a 1/10 and a half. De Rompf's first time then comes up on the board. Here's the cross over the line. It's a 2:04.1, and it's good enough for 4th place. FZR have control with their other car here, Oliver Rosqvist, then currently the quickest, and that second lap is going to be abandoned by Tobias de Rompf as Connor Franson moves up. Endurotech and a Mustang go fastest.
Yeah, let's see what Ewout van Kruijsen can do. Was a little bit late out of the pit lane. As you can see, we're almost over the halfway already over the qualifying. Because that's how long the track is. That's how much time you're gonna need for a lap time. As you said, Conor Franzen for Team Enduratech, which always reminds me of the old Marcus. I don't know if you know that, the old GT1 Marcus spec, driven by Cor Euser, also called Team Enduratech. Maybe it's a little bit not to those teams. Anyway, Ewout van Kruijsen. Let's see what he's going to do in his lap time as we see a new driver entering the server. It's Ross Young for Team Ross Young 4. Let's see what he can do. He's still in the pit lane. Has some time for qualifying, but there will always be one more lap for Ross Young. Excuse me.
Yeah, so the Scotsman will have the blue and black McLaren helping him out over the course of this, but is going to be really struggling out there. So this is Tobias de Rumpf, who I think going over the top of the crest, just clatters against the curb, and that will abandon any hopes of a second lap going through. Qualifying doesn't guarantee you the race win around here, as there is Luc van Wijngaarden then just finding out how tough it is going through the S's and down the hill again. But it does give you such a huge opportunity out there. There goes Oliver Althoff, then looking to try and get this sorted. Olivier going to try and make anything possible right now, down in 8th position for NXTGP out there, knowing that Shevlak Racing have just jumped up. Gardigo Racing have moved up. A 203.1 now for Unlucky with the Who's puts them in control. A 203.8 from NXTGP, well, it keeps them up in 6th position. So a couple places gained as the final lap start to tick their way through.
Well, good news is Ross Young is also driving a McLaren, so we'll have 2 McLarens now on the starting grid. 2 McLarens indeed. And let's see what Ross Young can do. But also, what I'm going to be a little bit worried about is the time that he has left. Because if you watch our racing, especially if you watch our NXTGP streams, you know when the qualifying, when the clock hits 10, it's not going to be the case of you can finish your lap. No, definitely not. When the clock hits 10, it's going to be continuing to the race.
Yeah, they're on a hard count today rather than a soft count, which allows them to finish any lap that they start. Just looking at Ross Young here, he is going to get over with about 2 minutes 15 left on the clock, so he is going to have enough time to go and put a time on the board. I did also see the Sahara 397 of Stevie Amantidis here have a spin over at the top of the hill, so that has pretty much curtailed their effort. The only other team that hasn't set a time yet is the Turbo Toaster team. They're just coming through the final corner now and making an effort here. So for Noah Stefan, it's a 204.5, which puts them into 9th position in qualifying. Splits up the SCR Simsport Team 2, number 7, and the Hype Racing 43, piloted by Max Kraus. So some important times going through, but the last driver who can set a time is Ross Young, as we watch on a 3rd lap. So getting a little bit more practice in late in the Aston Martin is Senna Bokhoven, then for the Irekanu by Velocity Racing team.
Yeah, unfortunately, Blokhoven lost the rear of the car there. Let's see what teammate Liam the Cock can do, as he is on his way through the last corner. A little bit wide there over the curbstone. Is he going to the pit lane? No, he's not. He's going to finish the lap. Right now, it's a 12th position for him. Is he going to improve? Oh, look at that. The rear of the car almost losing it there. Is he going to improve on his time, or is he not? The answer is no, he's not going to improve.
No, he's out of lap, so he's not going to be able to find that opportunity to do so. Ross Young, the only driver who can make something happen. If he's near the rear of the field, he'll be in the 205 bracket. He'll be in the 204 bracket if he's in the midfield. And if he's a driver who is quick here today, he will be in the 203s and really trying to work on up here. Looking towards now that fast section of the chase and carrying the middle of the road there, not maximising the line through, which indicates to me that the pace may be a little bit circumspect here, heading over towards the line. Is just working with the curb, passing the hotel, which is on the left-hand side of screen, under that Armorall Bridge, through into Murray's Corner, and looking to drive off the exit. This one very off the pace for Ross, a 207.8. It'll be enough to just jump up the 1 position in the end and move into 15th. Qualifying then is in the books, and the teams will line up as follows for 3 hours worth of racing here from Mount Panorama in Bathurst. It is Unlucky with the Who's Racing and Jeffrey Ross, who is in control, with Connor Franson there for Team Endurotech alongside. Oliver Rosqvist will go from third, with Christian Pino in fourth position for Full Gas Motorsports Green. Gardigo Racing with Gustavo Stefano will start in fifth, with Olivier Althoff in sixth position, and then in seventh for She Black Racing, it is Wout van Kruisen there in seventh, and FCR Simsport Team 2 in eighth with Tobias de Rumpt. Noah Stefford was 1.4 seconds off the pace in qualifying for the Turbo Toaster Porsche, with Hype Racing rounding out your top 10, with Max Kraus putting that time in on the board. Ebby Vermeulen was there for the Donk Racing team. They line up in 11th, with the two I Reckonu by Veloci cars then in 12th and 13th. The 127 and the 247 then together, then making their progress. That, of course, being Liam de Kock and Senna Bockhoven. You've then got Luc van Wijngaarden then for Picobello BV in 14th. The one car at the back is Ross Young, putting his time in at the 11th hour. And then Sahara XGT Motorsports failing to get a time with their two efforts then. So it's a tough day for Stevie Amantidis. So Amantidis will have work to do in that Porsche to climb up through the order. But it is going to be a day of who manages to find what, and we've got a lovely array of cars then here in this balance of performance. We've got at least one Ferrari, one AMG Mercedes, one BMW. We got the likes of one of the Corvettes as well here today. So to say that there's a meta out there, there's a group that works, I think there isn't a group that works, so to speak, as they get themselves set. They'll only as well have a short pace lap to get themselves ready for racing action.
Yeah, indeed, as you said, we got so many brands, so many teams here with so many different cars. And it's also going to be a race of time. It's 3 hours, so we're going to need to do some pit stops. And it's also all about, let's see what the racers can do with their tires.
Well, we expect this to be a two-stop race, all things considered. So it doesn't look like there's going to be anything massively dramatic in terms of how they look to sort that out. Hit the hour, and you should be best set for racing here. This, in terms of an endurance series, will feel like a sprint for them, 3 hours compared to the 6, as the Porsche iRacing first safety car dives down into one of the notoriously difficult pit lanes in all of sim racing. Now here comes the launch, the green flag in the air, and it is pace set underway by Jeffrey Ross, and Unlucky with the Who's Racing on the brakes then into Hell's Corner. They go along and try and figure out where they need to be. Wide going out there of that corner goes Oliver Rosqvist, and that allows Christian Buhan-Pino to make that move up and get what is needed. The Brazilian car of Gustavo Stefano there for Gardigo, now on the outside, but on the wrong side of the circuit to go and make something massive happen then through the early stages up into turn number 2. Cars running a little bit wide through the corner. Senna Bockhoven, I think, was one of them who ran a little bit wide, but into line they go with a clean start.
Yeah, two drivers who were starting from the pit lane. That's Oliver Althoff in the NXTGP 225 and also AB Vermeulen with the Donk Racing team.
So with both of those starting from the pits, they were expecting carnage on the opening lap, and so they've gifted away about 6 to 7 seconds then already at the start of this race compared to the back of the field. Up at the front, Connor Franson then immediately making that Mustang known against the Porsche there of Jeffrey Ross. But this is the section of the track where those who have got a car built for cornering, I'd look at those Aston Martins, I think they'll get a really good advantage today around this track when it comes to the tight and twisty sections, Dennis.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a little bit more heavier for Connor Franson, of course, in the quite heavy Ford Mustang, which is a car that's more built for straight line speed. So let's see what Franson can do here now in the slipstream of Jeffrey Ross. And I think right now we've got some issues, because I think it's Senna Bockhoven who lost some positions there. And if we look to all the positions, it's Christian Buhan-Pino who made up 1 position and 2 positions for Tobias de Rumpt.
Yep, so no moves then being offered up by the time they get over to that section. And yes, very slow is Senna Bockhoven then, who has dropped a couple places on track. And that one was coming out of the Forest elbow, causing all of those dramas. So easy to catch the wall around there and still slow going to the back of the field then. So a very circumspect moment there for him. It's either that or there is issues, because he actually did it going into the braking zone there, has completely tagged the rear and has gone to the back of the pack then, trying to work on through the damage. Side by side they go, not only for first but for third. A big powerful move down the inside by Oliver Rosqvist, and Gustavo Stefano sees Christian Buhampino drop down to fifth, and there's no room over.
As we already have a crash, unfortunately I can't hear Jake anymore. I hope his mic is going to get better now.
All right, turn for the cutting. Yeah, so here's Ross Young moving through. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, as he was trying to make that progress over towards that turn number 2. And when you're going through here, you're just hoping that there isn't going to be a tag, and that is the tiniest of tags that then sends the chain reaction. A big hit for Ross Young.
Yeah, absolutely. That's big damage, and that's unfortunately the end of Ross Young. Senna Bockhoven still there, actually, still not quite on the pace, if I'm being really honest. But let's see what's going to happen more in the front now, because look at Oliver Rosqvist. He is getting quicker and quicker towards Connor Franzen.
Yeah, so they've got that group 1, 2, and 3, but they can't afford to battle like this is at the end of the race in these early stages. This is a finding out process for these drivers. Who's got what? Where do I want to be? How do I want to do it? Little search to the outside, switches over to the inside, trying to get that move done. The line unwavering there from Jeffrey Ross up there at the front, was not going to let that one go in any way, shape or form at Murray's Corner. But it does mean now that you've got your top 10 effectively all together in line, all the way back to Liam de Kock at the moment then, who is in that 10th place. So they haven't been able to really break away, and I think it's telling that 11th place here, the NXTGP car of Olivier Althoff, has the fastest lap of the race currently. Up the hill then, into turn 2 once again, and it's once more a case of Rosqvist then having to now hold his ground, defends the line aggressively then, going up into the cutting, and that will cost a couple tenths going through this left-hand bend.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to watch out, because if you go for the attack and the attack doesn't work, you immediately, and especially Stefano, have to go to the defense from Pino. Let's see what Pino can do, because I have a feeling that what you also said, that the Aston Martin is, especially in the middle part of the track, a little bit quicker than the BMW.
Full Gas Motorsports Green, of course, second in the season opener. Look. So here is Christian Buhampino, who now looks to try and get the launch down the hill, searching over with Gustavo Stefano, hoping to get this done. Now, we'll be certainly looking to try and work underneath the very tall body of that BMW, which punches a very large hole through the air in terms of trying to get this past. Defensive line from the Brazilian Stefano, who just covers it off when needed to, and Christian Pino here is looking every which way to try and find a way through. Tobias de Rumpf is on the back of this group and thinking, well, my qualifying didn't go the way that practice did. I'd quite like to move up into the top 5.
Yeah, indeed, and also Connor Franzen, he was going for the attack with the car of Jeffrey Ross, the unlucky with Haas Racing. Right now it looks like it's going to be stabilized. Oh, that's Stefano, who's almost losing the rear there of the BMW. That was very, very close, losing 1 position to Tobias de Rumpf. But that could have been disastrous for Gustavo Stefano.
Well, I think Gustavo Stefano's very lucky that Christian Buhampino was there alongside him. There was a bit of contact between them, and I think that was the contact that kept him in this race. It's busy behind him in this secondary group now, with Mitchell van der Drift then leading that group in second place now, and a big lunge up the inside on Max Kraus from Van Wijngaarden, who is trying very hard here to go and gain that place. Max Kraus, I think, is looking at this in the AMG Mercedes, thinking, I'd quite like it if you didn't, because we're not going to be doing ourselves any favours in this group if we just attack at every section.
Absolutely, there can only be one outcome, and that is that it's going to end in tears. Luckily, it's Van Wijngaarden who also says, well, maybe we should do the waiting game, because if we're going to do the attack, then we're going to have one big major crash. Conor Franzen, let's see what he can do. Now back into the slipstream of the Porsche of Jeffrey Ross. It's going to be a very small slipstream that he's going to get. As right now, if we look to the lap times, last time around, it's a 2:04.6 for Jeffrey Ross and a 2:04.7 for Conor Franzen. So right now, around a tenth of a second that he is slower. He's really going for it, actually. Trying to make the gap a little bit smaller now, breaking it out, but don't overshoot, because then you're going to have a big accident with Jeffrey Ross.
Well, I just noted that the Turbo Toaster team have already come in and made their first stop. They've got damage to the rear of their Porsche, so that's going to put them on an alternative strategy now and off by a couple of laps. So they've got a lot of work to do, and Franzen, whilst taking the fastest lap of the race on a 2:04.497, is not quite in position at the moment to go and make something happen. But we talk about this being an endurance race and not a sprint, and if drivers are clever, they can save a bit of fuel and try and make something happen in the stops. Max Kraus thinking that the best defense is going to be a good offense here against Mitchell van der Drift. And this on the Chevrolet Racing 023, and there's the tap, and you were expecting it to come there from Luc van Wijngaarden there in the Picobello BV Ferrari. There is nothing you can do there. He's been poking his nose at every corner, and Max Kraus knew that that was just a time bomb waiting to explode.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a little bit too late from Luc van Wijngaarden. Let's see again what happens. You can see Max Kraus here on the attack of the BMW of Van der Drift. And there on the inside, yeah, there's a small gap, but that's very small, and almost Liam de Nok, who hits the car of Kraus very hard. Luckily for him, they all can manage it without very big damage.
So they're going to scamper off away without major issues there. So Max Kraus keeping it out of the barriers then isn't going to cause major dramas. There is Olivier Althoff, who now really looks to work, and now getting on the flashers, then getting on the light, saying, look, I think I'm quicker than Liam de Kock, and I can find a way through and jump up the place. The 64 gets a good launch down the hill, and Liam there just has to oblige and say, you know what, you are quicker, you're not my race, and I will fall back into line and try and follow you and see where that pace is going to be found. So an important move, to say the least, like this one for the race lead again. Conor Franzen, ever aggressive, searching about to try and find that place. He's got to be careful about how many moves he actually does, because he'll burn through his fuel a lot more every time he does it. And that lift and coast, that Aston Martin gets right up to the back. Oliver Rosqvist, then the Swede, is right on the rear and will love to pick apart here the likes of Franzen if he leaves anything but a sniff of an opportunity.
Absolutely, as we see on our screen that Ross Young is back on track. His car has been repaired, of course. In the beginning of the race, he had his hit with Noah Stefan. Both drivers had to go to the pit lane to repair their car. The good news is both drivers are back, as Luc van Wijngaarden actually was fighting with Mitchell van der Drift. And Van Wijngaarden still on the outside. No, now going back. And Van der Drift passes Luc van Wijngaarden.
Yeah, so that's an important block in the end from Mitchell van der Drift, who is there doing what's needed, number 88, now up through Griffin's Mount, which is never traditionally an overtaking place, and you never want to make these moves on the mountain because these left-handers are so difficult. You saw that there from Luke, for the moment. He just got so heavy over the curb going through Reed Park that it completely unsettled the car, and then all the drive that Ferrari is supposed to get with its low center of gravity just falls away.
As we are on board now with Luc van Wijngaarden. As you said, it wasn't very traditional to overtake at that point. Especially if you watch the Bathurst 1000, we have seen so many Australian supercars go off there with major damage. It looks like the runoff from Wijngaarden is better now than Van der Drift.
Oh, look at the lead.
Yeah, oh, look at that. Yeah, indeed. Let's go back for the lead, because there we have him, indeed. Conor Franson on the outside. That's going to be the inside now. He's put on the grass. Oh, now they do hit each other. The leaders are going off, and through goes Oliver Rosquist. Oh, my goodness me. And it's Jeffrey Ross who's full back now to the 5th position.
And importantly as well, Full Gas Motorsports Green jump up into 2nd. Now, the question will be asked about how aggressive you are into the corner, because it looked like it was just a clip of the curb that went through for Jeffrey Ross. That shuffled him out into the line of Franson. Franson then went over the grass, but it is a poor rejoin by Conor Franson, which initiates the contact back again. You're not automatically entitled back to the surface once you leave it, so I'd put that all on Conor Franson not rejoining the circuit correctly. He would have had to have just abandoned it, got a slow down penalty and brought it back later in the race, but suddenly it's Aston Martin's 1 and 2. Oliver Rosquist then leading for FCR Simsport. We'll take another look. So it's just that clip of the curb that sends the Porsche along, and then you just have to lift out of it at that point when you're off the circuit, because you are not entitled to space to rejoin. And quite rightfully, the lights flashing there from the Porsche number 11, unlucky with the Huzz Racing, your championship leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. If we watch it here again, luckily I'm not a steward, so then I can't make the decisions. Luckily we're just the commentators, but I think it was a little bit fault of both ways, because indeed, as you said, it was Jeffrey Ross who hit the curbstone, a little bit unlucky, and pushed the car against Conor Franson. Franson who went on the grass and went back quite aggressively. So I think it's going to be a racing incident, but still, for both drivers, a disaster for the start of their race.
Well, it certainly hasn't stopped Conor Franson, who will now be using the grunt of that Mustang engine there, the power of Ford, then finding itself in play along the straight, the slipstream, saving Christian Buhampino as they work into the chase. And now again on the outside, is that the right place you want to be? Another little shuffle through the corner, but this time that big bulking Mustang can muscle its way through, and there's not much that Full Gas Motorsports Green can do. Team Endurotech move themselves back to 2nd, and then FCR are now looking at this race lead and now have all that focus that's needed. So an opening 15 minutes, or 1/12 of this race, proving to be a very frenetic start to racing action, with a lot of eager action, eager moves needing to be made, and drivers looking every which way to try and find their passes. Christian Buhampino then sitting in that 3rd place, can settle down and find a rhythm, Dennis.
Yeah, I'm looking at the off-tracks right now, and it's Sanne Bokhoven who already has 4 off-tracks. Most of the drivers still have 0 off-tracks, so that's a good thing. Luckily for them also, the natural off-track, of course, at the Mount Panorama is the wall, so that's one thing they have to take account for. The other driver with 2 off-tracks, that's Max Kraus, also has the incident, of course, what he had. And also AB Vermeulen also has 2 off-tracks right off now.
You got to remember as well that as far as off-track incidents, it's not just for running off the circuit, it is for contact with other drivers out there. So if you do tap another driver around, for example, and have hefty contact, that is 4 incident points that will pick up. So you can't afford to race so aggressively side by side as we have seen in the opening 15 minutes. It can fall itself into dramas. Top 4 work themselves around on circuit. The other big battle is Mitchell van der Drift against Olivier Althoff and Liam de Kock. So that one also going along now as they chase into the Forest Elbow, the bottom of the mountain run, and then that chase back down the hill again. And for the lead, Team Endurotech, this time they breeze by, hitting nearly 270 kilometers an hour. FCR Simsport could only manage 258.
Yeah, That might be a little bit in the rear wing that they can do. Of course, you can choose to have a little bit of a higher downforce setup or a lower downforce setup. I don't know what you prefer, because there are of course a long straights with just a couple of corners. Of course, the corners are continuously, as we are going back to the fight between Oliver Oldof and Mitchell van der Drift. Oldof now on the inside, is going for it, he's going for the inside. Oliver Oldof, great overtake, and look at Liam de Kock. He is also fighting for it now, taking over P9, and that means it just one corner. Mitchell van der Drift loses 2 positions.
That's very clever racing there by Liam. He knew that there was going to be a little bit of argy-bargy between Van der Drift and from Oldof there, so ultimately just waiting for the apex exit to try and stamp on the power, get one and try and then get 2 for She Black Racing. They didn't want to be dropping down at the rate that they have been, but they now know they've got a lot more work to do to pull themselves back into line. So Liam de Kock gets what he wants, which is now a jump up into what is 9th place overall in this race, and still the focus will be up near the front. Now at some point you've got to turn away from trying to race outright and go for overall pace and start thinking long term about the strategy card that is needed and how aggressive you might be needing to save some fuel to gain a lap or 2 compared to some of the rivals. But Endurotech here are certainly flying. Connor Franson, I think, has got the red rag shown against him at the moment, and he is rampaging right now like one of the Pamplona Bulls at this point, because he's managed to build up that 1.1 second gap. And so for Rosqvist and for Pino here, they're going to be looking around at this in the number 12 and the number 8, thinking, what can we do? Ross Young, of course, who is 3 laps down here in this race, I believe having a little moment here over the top at McPhillamy, just catching the curb all wrong and having to go full opposite lock to keep it out of the barriers.
As we see here, the Corvette of AB Vermeulen on his way to Amanatides. Excuse me for that. Let's see what he can do in the Corvette. One of the only Corvette here on the track. Still, I think the car sounds a little bit less than the old C7R, which still has that brute V8 engine. Of course, this also has a V8 engine, but now with a turbo in it. And that also loses out of the sound. As also talk about loses, it's Amanatides who loses the position. AB Vermeulen hits the Porsche. And now it's Amanatides back on the track and losing 1 position out, back on P13.
Damage to the front right for Stevie Amanatides, and that will be difficult. He took the line and the turn as normally as if there wasn't a Corvette down his inside of AB Vermeulen for the Donk Racing team. So tough day at the office there for Stevie. Now he's going to be damaged on that front left and will be trying to manage that over the course of the stint. And it's not just the fact here, Dennis, that you lose the time in terms of the incident. If you have the damage on the front, it might cost you in terms of aerodynamic grip through the corners, which means it's also going to cost you in terms of your fuel mileage.
Yeah, don't forget what I said earlier. The lighter the Porsche goes, the more and more downforce you lose on the front, because of, as I said before, the tank of the Porsche is on the front side, meaning if the car gets lighter, you will have more understeer, especially now with some damage on the front of the car. The understeer will only get heavier and heavier, and as we said, it's also AB Vermeulen who gets off track, is getting back on track. No damage for him, although that's good news for him at least. But yes, indeed, so when you have more and more understeer, the front tires will also ask more and more, and you will get more and more problems with your tires.
And I know in a track condition as it is right now at 44 degrees, that it is a little bit too hot to handle for some out there. Max Kraus looking at Mitchell van der Drift here to try and take that next place again, and that will be the race on for 10th overall. So there is still a lot to try and unpack and uncover as the different types of car and the balance of performance try and work out what's going to be best for either side. And for Van der Drift at the moment, that BMW up against the AMG Mercedes. That Mercedes, and the skill of the Mercedes is actually through the gearbox. It's one of the best cars going up through the gears. It just loses out a little bit when it comes to top speed. It's the cadence that's so important. Easy pass at Hell's Corner. Max Kraus puts Hype Racing back in the top 10.
As we are on board now, indeed, with Kraus, who just overtook, indeed, Mitchell van der Drift. I think van der Drift is one of those drivers who says, you know what, I'm just going to get my own pace here. I'm not going to get any unnecessary damage to my tires or using more fuel. I'm going to wait for the long game, and let's see at the end if Mitchell van der Drift is going to win some positions with that.
Well, it's a long race, so it's not going to be a guarantee that this race is going to go the way that everybody wants. There are going to be winners in this, there are going to be losers, and the gainers over the opening 22 minutes are quite stark. FCR Simsport Team 2 to number 7 up 4 spots. Picabello and Luc van Wijngaarden then is up 7, and that's Senna Bokhoven pointing the wrong way round for one of the Veloci Racing cars out there. That would be the 247 over at turn number 2. That's all on his own by the looks of things, and one of the more unique ways to lose the car. So tipping it into the corner here, into turn number 2, and just not having enough downforce on the rear, throws it in the corner, and then trying to stamp on it on the exit, it just doesn't want to light up, and then bang into the inside guardrail.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be some damage for Senna Bokhoven. It looks like it's just a minor dent at the right side of the car. So that means you're gonna be very, very lucky with that, because if you lose the front bumper, that means you have to go to the pit lane to repair your car. Luckily for Bokhoven, it looks like Senna Bokhoven can continue. Some other driver who went off track, that's Luc van Wijngaarden. Let's see what he do. I think he's going to make the jump over the curbstone at the exit. Look at that. And 1, 2. There we go again. Not the best thing to do for the underbody of the car, but he still managed to get the car out of the wall. And I think, Jake, there is going to be someone in this race who is on the bad side of that end of the curbstone, and he's going to get to hit the wall.
But not only that, if they keep doing it, they will find themselves on the wrong side of the instant point limit as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And on top of that as well, you got to look at the nature of what makes that curb at the top of McPhillamy Park so difficult, and it's the fact that it's a very heavily raised curb on one side because so much attrition goes through the corner, and so when you got that rush off of the exit, because the curb is steeper than all of the others around this track, effectively you're climbing Everest and then you're falling off the slope, and so anyone who catches the curb wrong is going to fall off the slope very, very aggressively. A look on board with Olivier Althoff then, driving down the hill then through this wonderful SS section, looking for the Big Dipper left here and trying to take the drive off of the exit, flicking through the left and right for the Forest Elbow and giving that Picabello Ferrari something to think about.
Absolutely. Oliver Althoff also driving in real life. He's driving in the Mazda MX-5 Cup in the Netherlands. He's going to race this weekend again in Zandvoort for the finale out there in the older spec Mazda. And you come from Britain, right?
Yep, and so by that you take a look around and say what makes racing in MX 5-star racing so difficult is that you got to think every time you're out there on track. You're always looking to try and pick up the maneuvers and the moves any which way you can. FCR Simsport set the fastest lap of the race. They've dropped Full Gas Motorsports Green. They're in 3rd position now and are on the hunt to get back to Endurotech, and that will be why. Look at that damage on the front right there of the Endurotech Mustang. That is going to be causing a few problems out there in terms of a straight line for Connor Franson. So Franson then is going to be looking around at this going, I don't want to be in trouble, as in comes Stevie Amanatidis then to make that stop early at 25 minutes.
I think it's quite early, because now he has to go on the alternative strategy, which also means he's going probably on a 3-stop.
Yeah, and so if you're on a 3-stop, you are looking to prioritise a safe finish over the course of the race. And I think that's what you're starting to see here. The course of the race needs to work the way that you need it to. And so you are hoping that as far as this racing goes, that you are just getting to the finish first. They call it here in Australia buying a ticket to the end of the race. And so if you can get on board the train that says 1 ticket to the end of the race, you hope your stop does not get called early. Heavy over the curb again by Luc van Wijngaarden, and again just about getting away with it. So whatever that line is, I think that might be a line that works in 30-degree track temperature, but it is not playing ball with that Ferrari at the moment.
No, I don't hope he has a direct drive steering wheel, because you can even break your wrist with a move like that. As Olaf Oldhoff again is flashing his headlights, notifying, of course, also in the mirrors of the Picobello BEV car of Luc van Wijngaarden, saying, I'm here, buddy, I'm here, and I want to boss you.
Once a way through, but will he get it is the next question. We know how aggressive the 595 has been all race long. Of course, the contact that we saw with Hype Racing in the early stages and throwing the car into the corner at the chase doesn't quite get the angle that was required going through there for the NXTGP 225 team. The number 64 on the car being run with them today, exiting out of Murray's Corner and on towards their 14th lap of the race, already 17 seconds back off of the race lead. So Olivier Althoff is going to have to get a little bit of a move on here to run on through the groups, but a chance here for the majority of these drivers to settle down and figure out, okay, this is the pace that we've got, what sort of rhythm can we do? There's two great places, up the mountain into turn 2 or down the mountain. Again, another little flash of the lights to say, look, I can get through, I'm quicker than you. Every tool in the book to try and find the distraction that gets the move.
I'm looking at the chat right now on YouTube because we have a question from Lee Drinkle. Are there any British racing drivers racing? Absolutely. We have Stevie Amanatidis who's driving there, driving for the Sahara XGT Motorsports. And I think we might have another British driver who's going to switch, actually, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe that'll be William Hepworth who will be jumping in to the FCR SimSport number 7 a little bit later on in this race. If you want to count Ross Young as a Scot, as a Brit, then technically you can out there. So Ross Young also falls under that category as far as that currently stands. But I believe it is just 2 out there that have the ability to say that they come from from the British lineage, because Stevie Amanatidis does classify as a British driver. So there are drivers out there who are looking to prove what they can do over the course of racing, and so those out there from what I'd like to call the home nations are out there and trying to do what they can. Althoff again considering very close in towards the chase, but this has been a frustrating couple of laps where it looks like that Ferrari has just got enough of a run in the places it needs to hold off that move. Again, just trying to move out to that half a car length effectively to try and get that distraction through. And just behind that there are more battles, because Ebby Vermeulen in that Corvette has eyed up Mitchell van der Drift trying to get this pass, and van der Drift has held going through the final corner, heading towards that halfway stage. So now you're starting to get a sense of where the battles are going to come along. Those who have had good fortunes, those maybe not so much. Of course, Ebby Vermeulen starting from the pit now gets a great run out to Hell's Corner. They'll fight all the way to turn 2.
Yeah, let's see what Vermeulen can do against Mitchell van der Drift, the Polish driver against the Dutch driver. Mitchell van der Drift, is he going to be overtaken? The answer is yes. Oh, he outbrakes himself and hits the wall. It's a small scrape against the wall. He can't continue with it. But it's definitely one for the books and one for Ebby Vermeulen to watch out what he's going to do.
Well, got the braking line all set and sorted. The issue was the understeer that came through trying to get around the quarry bend. There's a reason why it's such a tough corner out there on the lap, and it is one that goes without saying in the sense that it is one of the tougher ones out there. You've got to hold yourself steady as Althoff has a big moment over the top of the hill. You've got to be very alert going through the Big Dipper, trying to maintain and hold that speed, going very close then to the rear of the Picobello car. And now that Ferrari is going to have to work out, where am I going to hold off that defense? Moves over to the middle of the road. Which way are you going to go? Looks like it's going to have to be some bump drafting along the stretch for the moment, because there isn't enough clearance to go and make that pass. Now's the pivot to the outside, but again, the Ferrari has got the number on the brakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see what Ebby Vermeulen can do. Back in the slipstream of Mitchell van der Drift. Is he going to make it stick now on the inside? Maybe choosing for the outside. No, he's not going to do it. Or is he going to outbrake himself again? Oh, that's so gross. Almost locking up his tires now. And you can immediately see that the gap is getting bigger and bigger now between Vermeulen and Van der Drift.
Well, that's what happens when you start trying to get aggressive and find those moves. Sometimes the gaps do open up. And the gap that they're finding over towards the likes of Max Kraus. Kraus did a 2:05.2 on that last lap. They were in the 2:07s and 2:08s between Vermeulen and Van der Drift. So they really are dropping time at this moment. Althoff still can't get the pass done on Van Wijngaarden then for position. So Van Wijngaarden is going to have to keep the defence up. But of course we are over that half an hour stage of the race, so drivers will be looking away from I've just got in the car, more towards I'm going to be looking around at that first pit stop, and the gaps that are opening up now between Endurotech and FCR now up at 2.5 seconds here for Oliver Rosqvist. So this is now starting to turn into a case of who is able to find the pace better than the others at the front.
Absolutely, it's Donk Racing, the car of AB Vermeulen, who is back at the Schijfvlak Racing of Mitchell van der Drift. Thing about Vermeulen is overtaking here is so hard to do, especially when the car drops bad down a couple of meters. Let's see what he can do. I think it's going to be an attack for him at the straight, but let's go back to the gap between Oliver Althoff and Luc van Wijngaarden, because they're next to each other, Jake.
And the unlock then on Conrad Straight was all about the mistake done by Luc van Wijngaarden. He overshot the corner and in doing so has now dropped the place. So Olivier Althoff now has everything he wants and now covers off what he's got into the corners and says, that's what I'm capable of doing that everyone else can't. I can take that place. And now I'll be looking around. But remember how good on the brakes Luc van Wijngaarden has been over the course of this initial run. And just behind them as well, they've got one of the Arekanu by Veloci Racing Cars, the 127 of Liam de Kock, who is there and just shadowing what's going on at the moment. Again, a little too aggressive into the corner by Luc van Wijngaarden. So that will open the gap up by about 5 car lengths or so along the mountain straight. And that is one of the learning things that you will see from drivers. Drivers get a little too close behind and drop all the time, whereas if they lift off and give themselves a 10th, they can still follow through the middle of the corner, even though it's a little bit more troublesome for a couple of others out there. Little off then for Ross Young, who just goes slightly too deep down there at the final section of corners down at the chase.
Yeah, let's watch back what happens. I think he outbraked himself, going a little bit wide there. Indeed, has to go to the grass. I know McLaren make a lot of things nowadays, Indy cars, other drivers, Formula 1 cars, but low mowing machines, I don't think that's something that Zach Brown wants to make as of now.
No, not at the moment, but I know that McLaren have been diversifying their portfolio and they've been doing a great job. And that is the first retiree of the race. It will be Stevie Amanatidis, who then finds the barriers, and that is down at the forest elbow. You can see there the suspension completely caves in as he hits into what is a complete concrete barrier. It's reinforced by the mud that is there on the outside of it for the fans. So Stevie, then your first retiree out of this race here around Mount Panorama.
Yeah, indeed. And it's AB Vermeulen again, who found the back of the car of Mitchell van der Drift. Let's see what he can do. Let's go on board with the Corvette, who can now maybe provide a little bit of a slipstream. At least Mitchell van der Drift can do that. Right now, it looks like he wants to go for the slipstream, but he still goes a little bit to the right, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see what he can do now into the corner. The gap is too big to really make it an attack.
But on the exit, look at the drive.
Yeah.
Definitely now a chance to go get it at Murray. So there was that initial attempt that you saw where he wasn't quite taking all of the slipstream, but it's great middle of the road defense out there from Mitchell van der Drift, who makes that life so tough in order to try and make that pass. So you know that if you're holding your line in the middle of the road, it makes it about, 10 times harder. You talk about you lose about 1.5 seconds a lap if you can't get by a car that's slower than you. So you've got to try and really figure out where is the best place I can get this past and consolidate at 1 or 2 places in the lap where you can really go and have a send. Thunder Drift has been really good at covering off the line and playing a defensive card out there, and again has it covered and scouted going through the quarry corner and up into the cutting.
I'm also looking into the gap between Oliver Oldhoff and Luc van Wijngaarden. Actually, it's Van Wijngaarden who has to watch out for Liam de Kock. Here we see the Kock. Let's see what he can do, because right now, as I look at the lap times, actually the Kock has been quicker than Van Wijngaarden, about 7/10 of a second. Also, something you have to watch out for is Oliver Oldhoff and his fight between him and Gustavo Stefano, because he's almost been 1 second a lap quicker than Stefano.
And if you're going to go on that track, you can also talk about how Jeffrey Ross is trying to work hard against Tobias de Rom, and the gap between them that is pivoting around a second too. So they're going to be working hard in that 4th and 5th place battle out there, as Liam now jams on the brakes into the chase and looks to try and get that launch off the exit of the corner, maybe suffering a little bit there in the medium gears. There's a 1/10 of a second goes back the other way in towards Murray's corner, and so Liam left with a case of, can I find a small mistake here or a small mistake there as the groups come together. They are not too far away, 22 minutes here from the first round of pit stops, which we will be expecting here out of 2. So I would be looking around and saying, as an exciting first stint, this has been what a lot of the teams have wanted and what some of the other teams maybe haven't, but I would look at what Liam de Kock's been doing, 12th up to 9th, and with 8th on the horizon and just in front. I think this has been a great job by the Aston Martin, and the work again up through the cutting, takes a big wide line trying to open up the exit, but just can't get the momentum through the corner. It's one where the likes of the centrifuge of the corner really pins the car to the inside, so you can really hold that narrow line.
Yeah, indeed. As we have Oliver Oldhoff in his fight against Gustavo Stefano. Let's see what Oldhoff can do. Let's go on board with him. And look how quickly he goes to the back of Stefano actually at this point of the track.
That BMW does not look very comfortable going down the mountain there compared to the Porsche. A big wide line taken. The Porsche takes that narrower line, but you can still carry the speed because of gravity helping you out through the Forest elbow and out the elbow and onto the full arm of Conrad. It is going to be a case of who's got higher speed to go and work with. Olivier Althoff is doing a wonderful job in terms of just running through the gauntlet, 1 car at a time here, 1 car at a time there. There's a change with Picabello, who will lose out, so Van Wijngaarden will lose the pass. Liam de Kock straight through on pure pace there, getting that done. That Aston Martin getting a wonderful launch, and now here comes Emmy Vermeulen's turn to see whether it's going to be 2 passes down on Conrad on this lap. We'll have to go the long way around against Mitchell van der Drift. There's contact, and there's a light brush of the barriers. Van der Drift is going to have to go across the circuit, and Shivlak Racing lose the place to Donk.
Yeah, I don't think Van der Drift locked in his mirrors, because there was a Corvette indeed. And unfortunately, they had some contact. I don't think the damage is that big on both of the cars. It seems they can continue, but still, it's a thing there. Or does it look he's crabbing a little bit? I don't think their car is... No, it looks like it. No, it's still okay. It's still okay, luckily. But there was quite a hit, actually, that Emmy Vermeulen had from Mitchell van der Drift.
It was a very, very important hit, and it's the second time he's had a knockabout on this circuit, so he's got to be very careful. Fortunately, it was side-on contact out there, so with the barriers, if you have side-on contact, you have more of a chance to get away with it than pure head-to-head contact, and there's the tag. They're through at McPhillamy Park. Olivier Althoff gets into the back of Gustavo Stefano, and Stefano's going to drop 2 more places on top of that going down the hill, and will be very frustrated about that, because that is just the difference of closing speeds between the bulky BMW and then the very nimble Porsche.
Yeah, let's look at the replay. It's already actually Stefano who's losing the rears here, hitting the wall. I don't think there was a tap. Let's see from the point of Oliver Oldhoff. Let's see if we can see it from there. One moment. Let's see if we can watch it again. Was there, oh, excuse me for that. Was there a tap or not?
It looks like it on my end. So I'd look at Gustavo Stefano there, and he definitely took the tag.
Oh yeah, there was definitely a tap there.
Yeah, and there's not much you can do when you have the most loaded corner on the circuit and you've decided, right, I'm going to try and just stick my nose in and see what sticks. It's not that style of track.
Absolutely, as Luc van Wijngaarden also has closed the gap between him and Liam de Kock. If we look at last lap times, they were almost identical. And now it's Van Wijngaarden who can hit the slipstream here. And don't forget that we saw earlier Van Wijngaarden who can brake very, very late. But the gap is way too big for an overtake maneuver there.
Well, maybe Quarry Corner is the best place on the lap, but again, just that mid-corner speed that's in there from Liam is doing more than enough to hold the honours there. And I do want to point out here the likes of Jeffrey Ross, who has been slowly reeling in. Tobias de Romp, little bit of a catch to the steering wheel for Luc van Wijngaarden, then moving through up now towards the Griffin's Mount turns 5 and 6 out there on circuit, working over the mountain now at this section, because FCR Simsport Team 2, they've been working hard to get back. And remember, Unlucky with the Who's are going to want a clean overtake with Jeffrey Ross, because they know that as the championship leaders after one round's worth of racing, they are the yardstick and the benchmark.
Absolutely, yes, and we're talking about the championship. There's, of course, not much to win, as we are, of course, very early in the championship. But there's a lot to lose if you do not finish. Like, for instance, Stevie Amanatidis, who lost out and is definitely now a contender of, contender, who's someone who unfortunately went out of the car and has not been coming back on the track.
Not much you can do when the car is broken to that level of degree. There is Jeffrey Ross, who is very happily close to Tobias de Romp and looking for any way to go through. McLaren versus Porsche then as they cross the line, and as they make that progress, 2/10 again for Unlucky with the Who's Racing, and that lovely pink and lilac and white livery there that sits itself back behind and tries to figure out in what way are we going to find that overtake here against the FZR Simsport team. So up the hill they go towards turn number 2, and I would argue even at this point, if you feel like you can salvage something from it, I'd look at Jeffrey Ross and go, try and take him in the pit stop.
Yeah, it's also something, the undercut at Mount Panorama is quite strong if you do it the right way. Because if you go out too long and your tires will overheat a little bit, then you're quite slow, then you have cooled down them, of course, in the pit lane. But I think it's too early now for Jeffrey Ross to already make a pit stop. I think he has to wait around, let's say, 5 till 10 minutes, and maybe he can go for the undercut then.
Might be the option that has to get it done, and sometimes the undercut is the way to make it happen. Sometimes it's even the overcut that becomes a little bit more beneficial. Depends on how they work about and think, okay, can I gain a little bit more time with the amount of tyre life that I have left? Through the Forest Elbow and working hard is Jeffrey Ross to try and unlock that overtake and move himself up into 4th position. And so I would say, at least at the moment, this is about trying to establish yourself as best of the rest. It's about 9 seconds down the road to Christian Buhanpino, who is there with Full Gas Motorsports Green, who are their nearest challengers. So in terms of a damage limitation scenario, I'd want to be one place behind the team that is my direct competition as far as championships would go. So Unlucky with the Who's are really trying to figure out, okay, how do we get into a position where this is more in our hands? Good run out of Murray's Corner, and again, they'll need the run here heading towards turn 2. Hell's Corner, very aggressive line by Tobias de Romp. He goes a little bit deep, and now here will come the run.
Yeah, let's see from our helicopter view. It is indeed Jeffrey Ross in the slipstream of Tobias Rumpf, but the gap is a little bit too big. There we go, there we go. He's going in for the inside, but the gap is still too big. And that's also what Jeffrey Ross thinks, because if he's going to put the car there on the inside, we know it's going to end up in tears. And now Jeffrey Ross has to play the waiting game again for the latter part of the circuit.
And, you know, there's a lot of circuits that get the reputation of being one of these tracks that you have to wait for opportunities to present themselves. There aren't many in the world, but I look at this one, I look at Macau as another great example. Po is a great circuit that has that mentality. Long Beach as well has that sort of style of feel to it, where you do have to play the patience card. You can't just go willy-nilly and overtake into every single corner. There is a tried and true tested method that gets it done. This was Oliver Roskvist, who again mounts the curb and has to have a really jarring underfloor smack against it, so that's really tough to deal with. And Max Kraus having a massive slide, needing all of the help there of some of the gravel kick up to go there. And what will make it tough as well going down the hill is actually how much that gravel gets dragged back onto the circuit, as here comes the battle for second, and Christian Buhampino looking for a way to make himself the prime Aston Martin out there on track. FCR in a little bit of a pickle right now.
Indeed, as Noah Stefan goes in for his second pit stop, but I think that's going to be his first normal pit stop, as he already has some damage, of course, in his crash with Ross Young. And let's see what Jeffrey Ross can do now. Close as ever. As we also look, of course, at the fight between Oliver Rosquist and Christian Buhampino.
There's certainly opportunity to make those passes, and I think a wise decision by the Turbo Toaster team to take the stop when they did. They were at risk of being a lap down. They have also changed drivers and put Niels Korge in behind the wheel for them. The Swiss-based team there, part of Helvetica. That's why their three-letter code is CHE rather than SUI. And Christian Buhampino getting really, really racy there at the cutting corner, looking for a way to try and unlock that pass, but they are now 6 seconds off the back of Team Endurotech, so any pass that needs to be done has to be done, I believe, with some urgency.
Oh, it was Buhampino who hit the ball there ever so slightly. You can immediately see that the gap is getting bigger now. It's still around 7/10 of a second. And let's see what Buhampino can do as Ross track. I see the notification also goes off track, unfortunately for him again. And let's see what Buhampino can do now. Gap a little bit bigger now, again around 7/10 of a second. As the exit of Buhampino was a little bit better than Rosquist. Still the gap too big enough to have a go for it.
Well, I think this is settled down, and get yourself ready for the pit stop window. We're about 10 minutes away from it, and there will be a large slew of cars to go in. But the fact that this field has spread out in the way that it has done, a couple seconds here, a couple seconds there, it does make life easier for that pit entry. And we talk about it being difficult because you got to try and jam the brakes on earlier, and then you've got a little chicane as you try and get into the pits with such a late yellow commitment cone to slow the car down. It is one of the few pit lanes that in certain machinery, it is actually quicker to take that pit lane than it is to take the final corner. So that is something to note, as here comes a look again from Jeffrey Ross. Big power move over to the inside, and as well pinches into turn number 1 and focuses at Hell's Corner against Tobias de Rumpf, who just has to sit on the outside and say, yeah, no, I've painted myself into a corner.
Sander Bokhoven, meanwhile, is going slowly but steady to the danger zone. Right now, he has 12 off tracks. Ross Young has 11. And the other one who has a lot of off tracks is Jeffrey Ross with 5 of total. And don't forget, it's the car who gets the off track. So if you switch drivers, the off track still stands.
And you feel that for an hour, if you don't want to get disqualified, you have to average 11 off-track incidents in the race. So if you burn through them early, you are going to be driving very much like grannies in the back of your car with I would say, casserole for Sunday lunch. You've got to make sure she doesn't spill any over the top of her. It's a nightmarish scenario for drivers who are trying to keep themselves out of trouble. But Christian Buhampino is not focusing on trying to be safe. He's focusing on trying to gain up that next place and get this first third of the race in the back pocket and say, I've had a very good opening stint out there. The 12s will be looking around and seeing Adrian Centurion and Raul Lopez Jimenez as other drivers that they can go to over the course of this race. So they're looking at this in the sense of they're going to get one car different time, and the Turbo Toaster team then in a bit of trouble coming out of the pit. So they've picked up a black flag, and I wonder here as Niels Korsch left the pits whether he was a little too eager on the noisy pedal, and I can only think that he sped as he came out of the pits or had himself an unsafe leave from the pits, which has now got him the black flag. It means that Turbo Toasters will have to come in.
Yeah, indeed. Let's see what's going to happen between Buhampino, because he is now closer and closer as ever on Oliver Rosquist as we go on board with him now. Let's see what he can do now. Of course, it's quite a small gap if you want to fight for the corner. And he's going to play the waiting game. This is maybe the moment, Jake, where you can say, as Christian Buhampino's, that you might go in now and see if you can make the undercut work.
There is an option for that at this stage, but you're also gaining valuable fuel mileage by just sitting on the back here of FCR. So I don't think that there's really a bad play at the moment. Gardigo Racing have just hit the lane, so they will come in and make their stop, and they have changed driver out there. So Gardigo will go to Gabriel Ardigo then to make that decision, as that will be their pit stop. So for the likes of Gustavo Stefano, they've made that decision that we're going to come in, we're going to change our drivers, slightly wider line. Taken in.
Oh, both hit the wall.
Hit the wall. That's big. So you get caught brake watching. One small mistake. You're trying to follow the line of everyone else, and they both make a decisive tap against the Forest Elbow barriers.
Yeah, that's definitely quite a big hit they both had, meaning they might have some damage, maybe even the steering out of alignment. I don't think that's going to be the case as of yet, but both drivers have been warned, and that's definitely over the line what they're going to do now.
Yeah, so they will have a lot to think about out there, and we've got, of course, those two cars in. Niels Korsch in for the Turbo Toasters. Again, great launch off of the exit, chasing all the way along. It's a defensive line that is put into play then by Rosquist. And now here comes the launch off the exit to up and under, and to charge up the mountain here, Christian Buhampino then getting that run, and will have to go the long way around, heading to Quarry Corner turn number 2. They'll fight for the braking zone here and see who is the bravest on the brakes, and the answer to that is Oliver Rosquist, who just about gets his line on the inside. A good effort there by Christian Pino, but could not quite unlock what was needed. And this is where it gets frustrating. A wide line through the cutting and gets into the rear. There goes Pino. He'll drop himself half a second, and he will feel he's being heavily impeded and now almost 10 seconds back on the lead.
Yeah, maybe heavily impeded, but that also could have been the end of his race. Oh, there again, by the way, Rosquist who hit the ball. It's just a small scratch this time around. But he is warned now, and both drivers are absolutely on the limit of the car, of the tires, of maybe even themselves. And you could say if it goes on like this, one of them might even find that they go over the limit.
Well, this is what pressure does for drivers in the 1/3 stage, as they now figure out where they want to be. They know they want the track position coming down into the pits, so it's about who wants to command that role at this moment. Who wants to say that this is where they want to be? And I would look around and see that the Spanish-based team, compared to the Swede at FCR Simsport, is there. That's a major look. I think he's too deep into the corner. Tries to block it up on the apex, and he will get the pass. Very fortunate there that the up and under wasn't quite in play for Oliver Rosqvist. Rosqvist will throw it straight back down the inside, but here comes another switch back into play. Little grab of the grass on the exit of the final corner, and now it's pretty much a case of gloves off for these drivers, and they will go bare knuckle into turn number 1, and it's held brilliantly there by the likes of Christian Buhampino. And looking at Oliver Rosqvist behind, he will feel like he hasn't done that much wrong, that one overstretch into one corner has got the pass, and now he'll have to do some very aggressive driving here to the outside. There's contact as they lean on each other in the braking zone, and still Full Gas Motorsports Green hold their station.
What a fight, what a beautiful fight to see between these two drivers, Rosqvist and Buhampino. And let's see, that's Buhampino in the wall, and now it's Rosqvist on the outside. Watch out, he's not going to get squeezed. No, fortunately not for him. But that's the second time that Buhampino hits the wall again, and that's definitely a warning for him.
Well, you can't afford to do that too often, and the more that you're clipping the wall on the outside, the more that you're going to get that car falling out of alignment, and that's the worry that you're going to have, that the steering's going to be a little bit shaky through this section. A missed corner there slightly by the likes of FCR and Oliver Rosqvist, and that there for Full Gas Motorsports Green is the clearance that they need to just start thinking about, okay, we need to now get on and charge in this moment, because the pit stops aren't a million miles away. They have now allowed Jeffrey Ross to close within 5 seconds of them, so there is still that they'll have to try and navigate by. The fact that Porsche that sits there in 4th position, the championship leaders, is big. Short of the hour then, in comes Connor Franson to make that first pit stop then for the team Endurotech, your leaders. So with the damage to the front right, they will now be eyeing up potentially a splash and dash at the end of the race of about 5 minutes.
Yeah, indeed, don't forget, they're still fighting with each other, of course, Buhampino and Rosqvist. But also they have driven behind each other for also quite a long time, meaning they could save a little bit of fuel. So as also Oliver Oldhoff comes into the pit lane. So I think that this is going to be the lap that both drivers are going to go for the pit stop. Meaning now that this is a virtual fight still for P2, because I think that as also Jonas Hofstadter is switching now, Luc van Wijngaarden is in the pit lane. Also something for Jeffrey Ross, he has to think, can he maybe go out for one extra lap?
Well, he's got 1 lap right now on the Endurotech team, and so with the German Hofstadter now into the car, you are now starting to think about what is the benefit of staying out this long. If you can knock on the hour, which every other driver does, and that is a very slow Ross Young, and I think he may have had troubles going down the hill. And he would have done. He has gone head first into the barrier, so he runs wide here, tries to catch it, bang, hits it once, and here there's no stop as you go through back across circuit, bang, into the barriers again, and that will be a day done, you would feel now, for Ross Young.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first driver whose luck ran out on that corner, as we are back with the fight between Buhampino and Oliver Rosqvist. I think both of these drivers are going in the pit lane for this lap. The question that I still have is Jeffrey Ross, has he saved enough fuel for one more lap? Because that could help him, especially at the end of the race. Because now Jonas Hofstadter, driving the 4th, went in last lap.
Well, any driver who has managed to stay out at this point has got anything that they want, and what that is the ideal strategy of a 2-stop race. In comes the top 2 then of Christian Buhampino and Oliver Rosqvist, and they've got to be very much on the marks as they hit their way down in. 3rd and 4th will also fall into line into the pits. Jeffrey Ross and Tobias de Romp, it is a pit party here in Mount Panorama, and so we wait then for the likes of Liam de Kock, who will come down into the pits. Max Kraus will then be the next driver who will need to hit the lane out there before the Endurotech team will find themselves as the next car in line. Driver change then is going to come into play over at FCR. They'll put Lukas Filipkowski in behind the wheel there. A driver change will go into effect as well with full gas, and it's Raul Lopez Jimenez who's in there. William Hepworth in FCR Simsport Team 2.
Yeah, look at the front side of the Corvette, of the Ford of Hofstadter. It has been repaired, meaning the car will be good to drive again. Let's see if Jonas Hofstadter is going to get P1 again. Yes, he does, because the rest is still in the pit lane.
An easy pit stop then, and that first cycle works out in Endurotech's favour, and so they've got the panel beaters out on it, and it has paid off in dividends. Lucas Filipkowski gets a major launch ahead of Raul Lopez Jimenez then. So for Raul Lopez, this is tough. He's got a lot of work to do now to jump himself back up the order and gain that time back. Jeffrey Ross is there in third and has got all of that fourth, I would say at this stage, and now has got himself eyes sighted on the Aston Martin in front, and William Hepworth not a million miles away. Mitchell von der Drift is now down in the pits, which now puts Gene Hahari then into place as the Picobello team jump out just ahead of Hype Racing, who have switched over to Mika Hoekstra.
Yeah, indeed. And someone who's a little bit more in the back is Gabriel Ardigo. I think he lost a place there because the BMW also had some damage. That was very close against the wall. Losing 8 positions right now because I don't know what happened with the car. There was some damage, but I don't think it was long enough to lose a lap. Or did I miss something?
Well, they are down a lap, which I think is a little bit concerning. And just looking at the way that their race has gone at the moment, they did find themselves down in the pits making their pit stop, and obviously that pit stop must have taken them a while before they were able to get back out and going again. So obviously what they were looking at in the pit stop was, I would believe at this stage, getting any optional repairs sorted before going back out and making that challenge again. Raul Lopez under immense amounts of pressure then on this run, and now you started to see what Jeffrey Ross is all about. This is the difference between having a driver who's been in the car for an hour, understands what it's doing, and those who haven't, like Raul Lopez, who immediately has to get out of the frying pan and into the fire, and now we'll see the likes of Jeffrey Ross try and work out where to put the unlucky with the hose racing car into play. No look at turn one because it's just a little too close to comfort then, but now here comes the chance to make it happen. Along the mountain straight, picks up an angle for the inside.
Here he goes, Jeffrey Ross on Lopez Jimenez. Let's see what we can do on the inside now. Normally the inside is the right side, and indeed it's Jeffrey Ross who goes to the third position.
So the move now sets itself up, and there is an important change in terms of championship effort, because Jeffrey Ross now moves ahead with Unlucky with the Who's ahead of Full Gas Motorsports Green. So they will now be at an advantage compared to who they're trying to race against. The one issue they'll run into is that FCR Simsport 8 was third in the opening round over at Road Atlanta. So they'll be certainly trying to hunt down Team Endurotech and try and put a little bit of a gap into what you deal with out on circuit. And one of the things that you'll find over the course of races like these is that it's all right having a car that works for one driver. In a series like this, you've got to have a car that works for all.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So as we hit the, or are over actually the 1 hour mark, a lot of things have happened already in the race, and let's see if we can go back to the moment where we all started, because it all started with a crash between Ross Young and with Stevie Amanatides. Here we see it again in the replay. They hit there for the Porsche in the McLaren. The tap and a lot of damage for Ross Young. Unfortunately, not the first time he had a lot of damage. Then if we go back in the further of the race, a little bit forward, we have the crash with Max Kraus, who hit the inside of the Ferrari. And look at that, just a small tap again, but luckily for him, no big damage. Then we have Senna Bokhoven, who also had a hit there. Same corner, a little bit too late on the brakes. and goes straight on. Tries to correct it and losing the rear of the car and hits the wall on the inside. Then we also have a lot of drivers who went off track, like Ross Young for instance. Braking, nothing on the car. A little bit through the grass and can continue, luckily for him. Max Kraus also had his issues. We didn't see this moment actually, but he is the one who managed to put a lot of grass on the track. Also, Mitchell van der Drift had some issues here. Oh, this one we actually missed. Oh, that was with the Corvette, of course. With a lot of issues between him. And that's how many drivers had some issues. And then we have another crash of Ross Young. Fortunately, went a little bit too wide on the curbstones. Losing the car left, right, hit the wall quite hard. For him again, that was the finale. And he is out of this race. So, let's go back to the live again. Then let's see what the race is going to continue for the upcoming hour.
Well, the one thing I've noticed is that there was a very long pit stop for Shevlak Racing's 023, the 88 car with Wout van Kruijsen currently driving in the car at this moment in time. So this is going to be a very tough run for them, because they are now dropped the lap out there on circuit, and they'll have a lot to try and get back into position. So this is Ebby Vermeulen then with troubles and catches the curb all wrong and just lacks that confidence through the corner. It does take a dent out of you every time that you go wide and in through this section, but Full Gas Motorsport haven't really given this one up. There's Jonas Hofstadter, your overall leader here at the moment through the first hour, and so at this stage you'd be looking around Lukas Filipkowski then in second position, keeping that gap steady at around 11.3 seconds, both doing 2:05.7s on the last lap. Mika Herkstra now looking to try and get Hype Racing up to 8th place. Picabello under pressure as Gene Hahari now is going to be the one who is looking behind, thinking, I do not want a piece of that AMG Mercedes.
Now don't forget, these two cars already hit each other, so they do have each other's paint on the car. Let's see how this fight is going to continue, as we still have a little under 2 hours here at Mount Panorama on Bathurst.
Chance then over towards Hell's Corner, turn number 1. It's all about setup through here. Slightly missed apex then from the Ferrari, which opens up the chance for Herkstra now to use all of that power of the AMG Mercedes to try and get that launch. Of course, the Ferrari sits very low down, and so that gives a big advantage in terms of cars trying to follow it as it hits the brakes up into the quarry corner, turn number 2, and then the launch off the exit being the highest priority here. Herkstra trying to find any which way to get that pass, but lifts well out of it here into the cutting, and that gives a good half a second back in the play for Picabello. So Picabello should have this covered over the top of the mountain for the moment, but this is your closest battle out there, with the exception of Unlucky with the Who's versus Full Gas Motorsports Green, who keep themselves together on track and know that they are in a holding pattern at this moment at around an hour 10.
Yeah, indeed. I'm also looking actually at the times of Lukas Filipkowski, because last lap time from him was a 2:05.7, and these drivers, Ross and Lopez Jimenez, are driving in a 2:05.4 and a 2:05.5, meaning in about, well, let's say a lap or 3, even though they're fighting with each other, they're still driving towards Lukas Filipkowski.
Well, they need to try and drive back up towards him, but it's a case of how quickly they are going to get there. 2:04s on that last lap, so these two are the quickest on track at the moment, but they will also have William Hepworth, who is the quickest driver on track behind them. He just did a 2:04.6 on that last attempt around, so it was able to pull a couple tenths of a second back on this group. He's about 3.2 seconds back. And so now that brings an element here that they're all jumping in on top of each other, and it's Lukas Filipkowski who's going to have to be the one that holds the fort down in second position. Not immediately, but I would say over the next 15 to 20 minutes, that is going to be something worth its weight in gold.
Yes, we are back with the fight between Mika Hoekstra and Gene Hahuri. Let's see what Hoekstra can do. Right now, let's go on board with Hoekstra because he has a run on Hahuri. Is he going for the inside? Is he going to make a stick? That's going to be a very late braking move. No, he's not going to do it. And that means the Hype Racing is still behind Picobello BV. Oh, look at that. On the outside now. Is he going to make it stick? No, he's not going to do it.
If you're going to try and make it work around the outside of the cutting, I would say that Hype Racing are doing this all wrong. So if you want to make the move happen at 2, you've got to get the clearance over at turn 3, the cutting. If you don't, then you're just setting yourself up for heartbreak every time you go around there. So that for Mika Hoekstra, you're going to have to try something different here to get that past, because he leaves the room every time and says, look, I'll take more confidence by holding that room, but there just really isn't that much to go on and say, look, I can get this pass done, I can make this reality happen. Raul Lopez Jimenez then starts to set himself up and set his stall, saying, well, I can sit on the back of Jeffrey, use that Porsche over the course of this middle stint, and that will set everything up the way that it is wanted. They can see some of the stint length strategies that are in play, and the difference is there being that Althoff, of course, has come down in, started a little bit further down. They've got Olaf Althoff now in behind the wheel in 7th place, and the chase is still very much alert at this moment. Jeffrey Ross comfortable right now in this position, looking around and seeing that, and there on the map you can see where everyone is.
Yeah, indeed, and as we said before, different fights are still on track. We see here the fight for P3 between Jeffrey Ross and Raul Lopez Jimenez. In the back we have the fight between the Ferrari of Gene Hahuri and the Mercedes of Mika Hoekstra. And if we look at lap times, I'm also very interested in lap times, by the way, it's also Casper who's getting quicker and quicker, now at 2:04.89.
Yeah, he's done very well here as Casper at this stage in the 1:27. Of course, is 15 seconds adrift of the cars in front, so can only run those quick times in the Orekanu by Velotti Racing 1:27 to try and chase that down. And it is very clear that the Aston Martins certainly do have a little edge out there at this moment. Hoekstra again gets close, but doesn't have the confidence at the cutting, and he spends the entire lap, it seems, right now, Dennis, chasing to try and get onto the back of Gene Hahuri, only to find that he can't get the move done at the cutting again.
Now, the thing is, especially in the second part of the circuit, you cannot do the overtake, because if you are in the inside of the car... Oh, wait a minute, is it Hoekstra? Yeah, Hoekstra tried it! He went a little bit wide. We saw some gravel being hit up, and does he have some damage on the right side of the car, or was it just a little bit of shadow? No, it was a little bit of shadow, luckily. But he did try it and went a little bit wide. So now the gap is around 0.4 of a second, and let's go back to the fight between Jeffrey Ross and Raul Lopez Jimenez. Let's see what he can do. He's flashing in lights now. Try to see if he can make Jeffrey Ross a little bit nervous, but don't forget, you already said it indeed, Jake. Jeffrey Ross already has a 1 hour and 40-minute stint. For Raul Lopez Jimenez, it's now just about 10 minutes that he's in the car.
But I think Raul has got himself up to speed now, and he is certainly looking to prove against Jeffrey Ross that he can find the overtakes, because he was having a little bit of a jab with a stick, saying, look, I can try and make the move at the chase. Didn't quite happen. I can have a try at Murray's Corner. Didn't quite happen. Hype Racing have their pass then on Picobello, and that's got them exactly where they want in terms of position. So for Mika Hoekstra, he had to get that done off the exit of the chase, prioritize the exit, long way around to get that move. It is worth noting that Gene Hahuri did run a little wide through the chase, and that opened up the door now for Hype Racing to move themselves up into 8th.
Back to the fight for P3 between Ross and Lopez Jimenez. Lap times between them are almost similar, around 0.2 of a second, 2,000, excuse me, of a second. Jimenez was quicker, that's almost nothing. But they have to watch out, because look who's coming there. It's Williams Hepworth, who did a 2:04.7 in the McLaren. And hit the wall there, by the way.
Oh, he's got to get careful about that. He knows that he's in a very good position here to try and chase down. If he does start clipping the wall any which way, and that includes with the rear, and that could affect the spoiler if it leans over the side of the barrier around that section. He's got a great chance of picking up a podium here today for the second of the FCR cars there in that McLaren. So William Hepworth, I think, can be a very hot hand in this one. He's got the gap down to 2 seconds, and I think he is certainly someone who's looking like, right, we can think about the big picture here in terms of each and every time. They cross the line and do a 2:04.5, does William Hepworth, a 5 flat from Lopez Jimenez, a 4.8 from Jeffrey Ross, a 4.5 from Lucas Filipkowski, and a 5.2 from Jonas Hofstadter at the front of the field. So everybody knows that this stint isn't going to be what we call, like your entrees. It is very much the meat and potatoes of this race. You have got to go out, put the hard yards in, give yourself a platform to attack the final hour.
Yeah, absolutely. As I'm looking back at the chat, because they're quite chatty on the stream. Hello and welcome for the second round of the NXTGP Endurance Esport competition, as we are driving, of course, for the 3 hours of Bahrain, which is almost at its halfway point. Let's see what you all are talking about. There is someone, actually, SB Visuals, who says that on lap 1 his sim fell apart, the middle part of the play seat what he was driving. So we had to put it back together and screw it in. I do not hope that was during the race, as we have a fight here on our hands, by the way. And it was so close, but it's unlucky with Haas Racing still behind the FCR SimSport. Something else, it's also where's the Rick van Brockhoven corner. I cannot watch the race without it. I don't know if you know what the John Club means with that, but and it's also it says show us the wax. We're definitely showing a lot of wax. I thought it said wanks, but that's something different. If you watch Jimmy Broadcast, you know what I mean about. Still, we are on a fight between Jeffrey Ross and also Raul Lopez Jimenez, who are almost similar at lap times. Let's see what Jimenez can do now, as he is closer, closer and closer, but still not gonna make it stick.
Well, all of this is stemming from running a little bit wide up the top of the hill from Jeffrey Ross, and so the moment that they start tripping over each other and forcing mistakes out of each other, they are going to be dropping that time again. So that's going to be where the worry and the concern is going to start putting itself in. Jeffrey Ross can't afford to have too many issues out there in the number 11. Now, this for Jeffrey is also going to be an interesting play, because Jeffrey will have to get out of the car in this final stint and hand the car over to Raymond Denit to go and finish off the result. So this is going to be where Jeffrey eyes this up and says, what more can I do? I've got to make the most of my last hour in this car. This is where I look around at Raul Lopez Jimenez and think, well, Raul is just trying to do what he can, and there are the looming sights of William Hepworth and the lap down Gardigo Racing 9 of Gabriel Ardigo.
As we are on board with the McLaren of William Hepworth. In front of us is the full gas Motorsport Green of Raul Lopez Jimenez, and in front of that the FZR SimSport car of Jeffrey Ross. And slowly but steady, it's Hepworth who's getting closer and closer to the Aston Martin and Porsche.
And that McLaren is going to be very quick in a straight line. It always is. It's built for that style, and you get cars that work differently. And often you find as well, as we'll take a look here, this was the off from Jeffrey Ross over the top of the hill. Massive hit on the curb. Had to fend off the inside and then just about managed to do so. I think when you're looking around at what a car is, you need a car that has slightly less downforce for the race. It unlocks overtaking. The natural downforce in terms of that McLaren is very, very good in a straight line.
Yeah, absolutely. Fortunately, the fight between Hoekstra and Hahouri has also been done, of course. We saw Hoekstra overtook Gina Hahouri, and now it's a gap between 2.2 seconds between them. Also, we see Olaf Oldhoff, the younger brother of Oliver Oldhoff, driving the Porsche. Right now, they lost only one position, but if we look back at it, they also start from the pit lane. So I would say they make up a lot of position from that.
I'd say they have done too. To find themselves in 7th position is a very, very good prospect for them at this stage, as Jeffrey Ross again along the straight keeps himself in play. Wout van Kruijsen struggling then through the corners. They're 2 laps down now on your overall leaders. And now we're getting to the light flashing stage here of can I find a pass for Raul Lopez Jimenez, then hoping that there is going to be an unlocking of this pass up the hill through the cutting at this stage, and we tick over towards 3 o'clock in the afternoon in sim time, and this track is dropping its temperature now. It's gone from 44 degrees Celsius down to 40 degrees Celsius, and 4 degrees might not sound like much, but it is a big amount of temperature drop for these drivers. It allows them more confidence through the corners, it allows them quicker times, it allows them to really work through each and every section, especially as the track rubbers up through the race.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, look at that. It's Jimenez who almost hit the back of Ross, meaning that Ross managed to get away from it now. Let's see what the Aston Martin can do, because this is the moment where the car of Lopez Jimenez can get into the slipstream of Jeffrey Ross. Let's see, it's now 0.35 seconds, 34 and counting down, 33. I don't think it's enough for an attack, but it's surely enough to get close again.
Well,
look at
Raul
the speeds,
Lopez
by the way.
Gets very close through the entrance of the corners. It's the exits, though, that are prioritised as they go through. So while he can get close on the brakes, the issue is that Jeffrey Ross just has the ability to stand on the noisy pedal and run away. Again, here comes the big launch down to the inside. Nibbles again at the rear. Then, and unlucky with the Who's, in a big scrap right now with Full Gas Motorsports Green. Your top two in the championship, nose to tail, and giving everything they can.
Yeah, I completely understand Raul Lopez Jimenez, because look at it, the McLaren of William Hepworth is getting closer and closer now. The gap is under a second. So if you want to run away from Jeffrey Ross, who we know he has to pit and has to switch with his teammate, I think this is the moment now that Lopez Jimenez says, alright, I got to go by now, I got to pass Jeffrey Ross, because that McLaren is getting closer and closer, and it's getting uncomfortable having a white and red car in my mirrors.
William Hepworth just quietly putting the yards in, the fastest driver on circuit, and by a comfortable margin on that last lap, 7/10 of a second quicker, as Mika Herkstra now has caught the back of Olaf Althoff, who's doing 2:08 compared to the 2:06 of Herkstra, moves over to the outside, and this should be clean because of that cadence of the AMG Mercedes there. The Porsche then is going to lose out the battle of German manufacturers, and NXTGP fall back into 8th place. This is what you'd call having your medicine at the moment, and this is why Olaf Althoff lost that time. Caught the curb on the inside, slams over the curb on the outside, and just about keeps it out of trouble.
It was Raul Lopez Jimenez who was looking at Jeffrey Ross, because that gap was under a 1/10 of a second. I think it was Jeffrey Ross who went a little bit wide, but then we have, of course, the very, very cornery part of Sector 2 when you go down the hill, as William Hepworth is fighting with the backmarker now. The backmarker, of course, of Gabriel Ardigo, who says, yeah, I'm now in the slipstream. It looks like I'm faster, but he's not going to make the pass, of course, because he knows he's a back marker, so that's a good thing on him. Let's see if we can get the fight again back for 3 cars for the 3rd position.
Now, Gabriel Ardigo, will have the ability to unlap himself if he would so choose to, but game recognises game, I think, is the position we're in. William Hepworth has been running this pace, has been doing a good job, and I think Ardigo's trying to run themselves up to Anthony Sieber, who is about 5 seconds down the road with Lucas Vilikovsky at the moment. So that's the end goal of Gardigo. If they can get by the 247, I reckon, by Velotti Racing car, they can have that way through, especially if that car has a very sketchy pass through from Lucas Vilikovsky, a little unpredictable there as they went up into the cutting. So that is also going to give a bit of help to these drivers right now in 3rd and 4th to try and chase down FCR Simsport in 2nd, as Olaf Althoff now will be looking behind at the next car trying to pick up that pass, and that will be Gene Hahari trying to move the Picabello BV 595 Ferrari back into play. Shallow line by Raul Lopez, who is not close enough yet over Peter Brock's skyline.
No, indeed, he was looking for it, as I see that Oliver Oldwolf went a little bit wide in the last corner. Oh, that was so close from Lopez Jimenez, almost hit the corner of, hit the wall there, as they are now slowly going to the back marker, and I think that's the 247 car of Anthony Saber, the American, now driving the Aston Martin, and that's good news for Jeffrey Ross, because look at the slipstream that he has right now.
He gets a run, and because of that run, he'll be able to stave himself off this lap, but he will need to be a little bit cautious about where they go on the brakes. They both slide their way on through, but the mark there of Raul is starting to make itself known. Great under braking there at the chase with the double toe, and again looks over to that inside, and it's only a fein over to that inside line. He can't get any sort of overlap to command space in the corner and has to fall back into line again. William Hepworth will have to work himself through Anthony Sieber, and then he'll get himself caught up in a lap down scrap if he's not too careful. So Hepworth has to try and work his way through quickly, but Raul Lopez Jimenez at this stage is now eyeing up any place he can find a pick to get a pass.
Yeah, absolutely, as Raul Lopez Jimenez slowly but steady again driving to the back of... Oh, by the way, something happened, I think, with Saber. Where is he? Yeah, there he is. Oh, that's a good... Oh, well, Jeffrey Ross. What's Jeffrey Ross? Oh, it's nice. It's side by side with each other. And he's getting on the inside now. And Raul Lopez, he tried it. He tried for the overtaking. And they did hit each other. We saw that just barely when we went back to them. First time. Let's see what happens, because we do have a replay of that.
Well, the door just gets left open here by Jeffrey Ross. So Raul Lopez tries to take it. There's a little tap between them. But of course, at the Griffin's Mount, there is only one line through turns 5 and 6. So Raul Lopez lets it go and says for Jeffrey Ross, I've got the coverage still and I can hold my station. So this is Anthony Sieber now up over the top. Gets a little bit wide, and that's it. So
that's
doesn't really have anything more than that.
Wide.
Yeah, but did very much lose the place there, really, in that scenario, Dennis, by just not having the same pace as what Gardigo had.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Back to the fights between Jeffrey Ross and Raul Lopez Jimenez. As of right now, Williams Hepworth slowly but steady again creeping in, as Niels Corrigan is going in the pit lane for his pit stop, which is logical because he already is out of sync.
Yep, so Niels Korsch then making that decision to dive down into the pits, get service done, and that is just before the halfway stage of the race. And so at this current rate, they're on a 6-stop.
6-stop, yeah. I'm glad you can do the math. Let's see, back to the fight between Lopez Jimenez and Ross, who has been fighting with each other, I would say, ever so since the beginning of the race. Of course, it was Ross who was fighting with the Ford of the teammate of Jonas Hofstadter. They did hit each other, and Jeffrey Ross fell back to the 5th position, now back on P3. Of course, Ross was the man who... Oh, by the way, a moment there for Jimenez. Ross was the man who drove the car to pole position. But already at the first corner, it was a teammate of Hofstadter who went first. And what followed after that was a big battle with a small hit, unfortunately.
Now, this is where I think this race has its own intricacy to it. So the Aston Martin is very, very good out here on circuit, working itself through the corners. I think it wakes itself up very well. It's light, it's nimble, it's flowing as it goes through, and I think it's got a very good transfer of weight through the corners. And I would say if you build a car like this as a GT3 spec, I think it's a very, very adaptable car to drive anywhere. That Porsche sits down and it's got its weight a little bit further back in it. So with that nature of it being a little bit more set back, that the nose is often a little bit lighter on the Porsche as you go through, you're not dealing with as much of a pointy front end through the corners. You're basically driving from the passenger seat as the FCR car of Lukas Filipkowski has a tiny little off there going through, just overcooking it on the brakes, and that is just one lapse of concentration, has to surf the slowdown and get back into play again. So the gap, again, back to 11 seconds at the front, and Gene Hahari is really trying to work hard here to get by Olaf Olthoff here. This is an important pass for this 7th place out there at the moment, or sorry, even the 8th place right now, and Picabello, I think, will realise that they can't hang about with this because the Donk Racing Team and Ebby Vermeulen are hunting them down in the Corvette.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course, Olaf Olthoff, one of the youngest drivers of the grid, only 14 years old. And is defending like an animal between him and Gene Hahuri. Hahuri, a couple of laps ago, also tried for the overtake, went a little bit wide. That's why Olaf Olthoff managed to get his position and stick with it. Now let's see what Hahuri can do now, as you said, of the Picabello BV car. Last lap times of Olaf Olthoff, 2:05.9, Gene Hahuri at 2:05.9.
So they matched, but lost a second over to the Donk Racing Team, who are hunting them down. There is the looming yellow Corvette that has had a couple nibbles off the barriers over the course of this race. And the red mark then on the timing indicates that the Endurotech team are over half a lap ahead of them, so they could be fighting to stay on the leading lap by the end of this race at 1:08 and 1:09 down on your overall leader, which is still Endurotech. So they've got that work to do in order to hold themselves steady, but Raul Lopez over the last couple of laps here has dropped the time here to Jeffrey Ross, who has just stood on song and said, right, pace time, let's get going. So now that's opened up the door here for William Hepworth here in the second of the FCR cars here to now start thinking about, well, it's not I'm going for the podium, it's I'm making the pass for 4th.
Yeah, indeed. Let's see what's going to happen in that side of the race. Let's go back with our fight for P3. Let's see what Jimenez can do. The gap is now a little bit bigger, though. It's now 1.5 seconds. Where is there has been an issue somewhere with Lopez Jimenez? Because the gap is indeed bigger. The lap times also a 2:04 against a 2:03.
Well, the 2:03s here from Jeffrey Ross, I just want to put this into some perspective here with this, is the fastest lap that Jeffrey Ross has done all race, jumping into the 2:03s. So he is very much racing with the intent that pace is going to have to be found. And when you're looking around at the fastest time in the race, there was a 2:03.6 set by Connor Franson. So the fact that you're seeing Jeffrey Ross go to a 2:03.7 to try and break away at this point, that is indication that Jeffrey is now using as much of the car as he possibly can at this stage and is being joined by William Hepworth, who's closing that down. Raul Lopez Jimenez just cannot stay with the pace, and it's aggressive from William Hepworth over the top at McPhillamy. And now as they descend down the hill through the S's once again, all that time comes back to Jeffrey Ross, who had a little bit of an excursion going through up at McPhillamy Park. So that gives the Full Gas Motorsport Green team something to work with, and it's now a 3-car tandem in this scrap going on for the last spot on the podium at just over the halfway stage of the race.
As we're back on board with the McLaren of William Hepworth, and look at the steering wheel. That car had quite a knock on the rear because the steering wheel is not straight anymore, meaning that Hepworth is going to deal with it for the rest of this race.
And any sort of steering issue out there that you've managed to navigate through is going to be one nightmare that you don't want to deal with. The good news for him is that he has been dealing with that steering effectively left hand down over the course of this run for a little while by the looks of it. So it doesn't look like it's majorly untoward with the way that some of the hits have gone over the course of the car. But I would look around and say, in terms of what they're looking for now, it's about how do I unlock the next stage of development for this race. Even though I'm damaged, I'm still keeping pace with those around. Ebby Vermeulen now has caught the back here of the group of 2 in front, which is the NXTGP number 64 and the Picobello 595. And a wonderful way to see a battle of 3 manufacturers, Porsche versus Ferrari versus Corvette.
Yeah, if we look more in the front, it's Porsche versus Aston Martin versus McLaren. Quite a diverse grid we got here. And let's see what's going to happen between them, because it's Jeffrey Ross, of course, who has such an amount of pressure, because every time he looks like he's going to get away, he makes some small little mistakes. As we see now also Lopez Jimenez going slowly but steady, more and more to the back of the Porsche. But also Lopez Jimenez has to watch out, because if he's making a mistake, then it's Williams Hepworth, who's going to get that 4th position.
And while all that's happened, the Corvette has gone through, but Picobello aren't sitting down, and Hahari is going to have to fight around the outside. He got a little bit of a door full of yellow Corvette moving by, so Hahari will lose out. Ebby Vermeulen will now move up the place and gain that one in confirm for Donk Racing Team. They are now up into 9th place, and the number 15, they will have to go to Constantine Donk over in the final stint going forward. So you get this understanding of what do you want from your driver composition. Sometimes you get someone who does all the donkey work for 2 hours, and you put one driver in for the final hour at the end who's just the anchor, who's there to just steady the ship and make sure the car does exactly as required.
Absolutely. Look at the times of Jeffrey Ross and of Raul Lopez and Jimenez, all in a 2:03.97, an identical time between them. And it's Hepworth who's still there on the backtrack on 5th position, who's managed to get 3 positions if we look at his starting position.
Yeah, that jump up from 8th to 5th for the FCR SimSport team. And with that opening stint that was done then from the number 7 by Tobias de Romp, this is a really important moment in their race. They know that they don't want to lose too much time behind these drivers. They are slowly reeling in the race leaders here. They've got that gap from what was 15 seconds down to 13 and a half, but that's not going to get the job done by the end of this race. Endurotech have done a great job of holding themselves steady. The gap that has been up at 11 seconds just ticked under 10 over the course of the last lap or so. So that will mean that Endurotech are just trying to manage this phase of the race, and that the FCR SimSport car of Lucas Filipkowski, who has been very quiet about over the course of this run, is still there and is putting a mental amount of pressure then on the Mustang of Team Endurotech. It's just a case of where this race will open up for these drivers, and now Ebby Vermeulen trying to move on closer here to Olaf Althoff, of course, the 14-year-old behind the wheel of the number 64, and now really trying to work through the cutting, turn number 4, up the hill looking towards Griffin's Mount at turn 6. This is the right of turn 5, and then these fast right-left chicane. If you even breathe the wrong way through here, the car's in the barriers, and now this is where these left-handers become so critical through Reed Park, now through Solman, through over the metal grate and into McPhillamy.
Should go back on board with Ebby Vermeulen in his fight with Olaf Althoff. Oh, look at that, he's getting closer and closer and closer. Althoff doing amazing lap times, by the way, for him. As I said, only 14 years old, under immense pressure of Ebby Vermeulen. Let's see what he can do now in the slipstream, because the gap is under 0.2 of a second. Don't worry, it's not raining, it's just to get some rubber off the windscreen. That's gonna be something else if it's also starting to rain. Don't worry, it's not gonna rain, by the way.
No, weather forecast shows that it's sunny skies as they go about. Here comes Vermeulen on the inside of the chase, but lifts out of it, very aggressive through into the corner. It's a little bit too deep though from Olaf Althoff, who goes around, and that will open up Ebby Vermeulen to go through. It was all about a battle of brakes and sneaking by both of them there. That is a big pickup for Gene Hahari, who now moves himself up into 8th in the Picobello Ferrari.
Yeah, let's go back to the replay of what happened. It's actually Olaf Althoff who braked a little bit too late. Got tapped, of course, by the Corvette. The Corvette has some damage to his car. And where did Ebby Vermeulen lose his position then?
So Vermeulen's going to lose all the pace here because of the fact that he's gone a little deep into the corner. Althoff's also gone deep in, and they've had the tangle between them. That opened up the immense amount of overspeed then for Jean Hahari, who was able to get around and make that move. So a very quick pass that has been done, and I hope that's not the way that Raul Lopez Jimenez is going to be dropping about, is blinking around quite heavily at the moment then, trying to keep himself in this race. Now, they will have to be careful that the black and orange mechanical flag, the black and orange connection flag doesn't show, and they might lose laps because they're not in position to score the laps that they need to because their connection's not good enough.
Yeah, indeed. Luckily, they're back on track now. As at the back, Abby Vermeulen still in his fight with Jean Hahuri. Let's see what Vermeulen can do. It's getting closer and closer. A little bit of understeer there. Something you definitely don't want to have. You need to have quite a steady car in these corners. Well, luckily for him, everything went okay.
Yep, but for the moment, it's about trying to navigate through. They're on their 48th lap of the race, these drivers, right now. Your leader's on lap 49 as it currently stands, and now for Abby Vermeulen, it's okay. The NXTGP car is one thing. Let's focus now on the next part of this race, which is how you try and get by the next car in front of you. But it has just been sit down and work on the stint here for these drivers in third and fourth. It's been pretty much a persona invisible for the front two, because this third place battle has just been nose to tail the entire way. There's the unlock then for Donk Racing Team against Picobello. They'll get the inside into turn number one, and they will get the movement through to get that pass. They've just got to make sure they confirm it along the mountain straight so that they don't have to worry about the attack into Quarry Corner at turn two.
Yeah, let's see. Jean Hahuri back in the slipstream of Abby Vermeulen. Now the gap is a little bit too big to make it stick. Is make him look himself in the mirrors. Make that Ferrari as wide as possible. Also, same thing can be said from Abby Vermeulen, making that Corvette as wide as possible so that Jean Hahuri cannot do the overtake. Back to the fight for third position. Right now it's William Hepworth who has to do a little bit of getting the gap a little bit bigger, I want to say, between him and Raul Lopez. Last lap time was good enough at least. But don't forget, if Lopez Jimenez is fighting with Jeffrey Ross, that's the moment that William Hepworth maybe even get closer and closer.
I'll tell you what, Team Endurotech have just set the fastest lap of the race, which is a 2:03.5. So that has certainly helped them. So this is Jean Hahari over the top of the hill. Again, catches the curb on the inside. That forces them to catapult over to the outside. And again, another carbon copy moment of a move over that finds the troubles in play. But Jonas Hofstadter with a 2:03.5. It's a 4-4 for Filipkowski, and they're in the threes as well with Lopez Jimenez and Jeffrey Ross. I just think that Ford Mustang is really, really good in the second half of the stint. So, you know, they can hold their pace. They can hold themselves close through the first part here at this moment in time, Dennis. But where they are starting to come undone is in the final 20 minutes or so, where the Endurotech Mustang just has the ability to, you know, just put the pedal down to the metal and say, I've got all the pace.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, when you go to put the pedal down and you have driven like this for 2 hours, and then in the end of 2.5 hours by then, and then you got to put the pedal down and you go out of your rhythm, that might be some issues for that. Don't forget, quite some years ago, with Ayrton Senna in Monaco, also be asked to slow down a little bit, out of your rhythm, and then that's where you can maybe crash.
So they know that you can't drive at 100% the entire time, and I think it's even more dangerous to drive outside of your pace rhythm. So you dial it back to 99 to 98 to 97%. I think that's also very dangerous, because if you're not driving at 100%, that's when the mistakes start to creep in. And speaking of creeping in, they creep back to the rear of the FZR SimSport car. They're the number 8, which is third in the championship currently, in second position. And they are starting to bring that gap in. So an important range finder for those at the moment, and Unlucky with Who's now take the fastest lap with Jeffrey Ross. So that 2:03.4 really wakes up and says, well, if you can go, I can go, and that's the sort of level of pace. They are dropping William Hepworth here to the tune of about a second and a half behind them, and now I think this is where you're seeing Jeffrey Ross try and unlock what the power of the Porsche has.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, the Porsche now getting lighter and lighter. We are almost 10 minutes away from the second stint of pit stops. Let's see, here we have our leader, that's Jonas Hofstadter. You almost forget that he's still on track.
Well, inauspicious with the way that this lead has gone for Endurotech. They've taken it, they've built the gap and margin, and now 12 seconds clear at the front of the pack. You would say this is a job well done by them at the moment. They just have to convert on this, and there will be some very important points that come in for the Endurotech team. They finished 4th in the opening race, the 6 hours over at Road Atlanta for the Petit Le Mans style event that they had on. So when you're thinking about what the championship looks like, your top 4 from round 1 are still your top 4 here from round 2, but Endurotech are looking to pick up, FCR are looking to pick up in 3rd. Now I'm going to put a scenario in right now. If Full Gas Motorsports Green find a way to get by Unlucky with the Who's Racing and find themselves in 3rd, we are on course here, Dennis, for a 4-way tie at the top of the championship.
Yeah, absolutely. And look at that, because Jeffrey Ross and Lopez Jiminy are slowly and steady indeed are going towards the FCR Simsport, what you said. Especially lap times of Lukas Filipkowski are not that bad at all. 2:04.2 now, alright, behind them. It's almost identical between Jeffrey Ross and Raul Lopez Jimenez, and now it's Lopez Jimenez with the quickest time.
Well, for half a second, it was Jeffrey Ross with the fastest lap of a 2:03.3, but yeah, Raul Lopez Jimenez was able to eclipse him by 18 thousandths of a second to say, no, yoink, that's mine, I'll have that. And they are reeling hand over fist, Lukas Filipkowski in, and 2:04s aren't a bad lap time at all. They are very much serviceable, they get the job done, they are consistent. The issue is consistent when you got some very quick drivers working behind you, trying to hunt you down, isn't going to be what you need just before the pit stop. William Hepworth, happy to watch in 5th place, but up over Griffin's Mount and really trying to use all of the road is Jeffrey Ross. You can pin a little bit easier if you're Full Gas Motorsports Green and Raul Lopez Jimenez, and Jimenez taking the shallow line into McPhillamy Park, staring at the rear spoiler and there the diffuser work of that Porsche down through Skyline and the S's, now into the Big Dipper, where you get a massive hook of grip as you exit through the middle of it, as that is one of the steeper sections of motorsport. I think only the Corkscrew has as much of a big drop, and there is a little clip against the wall from Raul Lopez Jimenez.
Yeah, indeed. Once again, scraping the wall. Look at this from the bumper of Jeffrey Ross. Beautiful scenery, of course, also on the track. As we see on the right side, the letters of Mount Panorama. Something that Jeffrey Ross is definitely not looking at. He's looking at his mirrors right now, because Raul Lopez Jimenez getting closer, closer and ever closer. As we also, what I think actually, Jake, as the paces are going up, the fuel will be more and more going down at levels.
Yeah, they're definitely burning that fuel, and the fact that they're able to hold themselves steady on the tyres, that they are lasting the hour and they are certainly holding the same sort of level, I think is quite an important matter of fact in the way that this race has been going over at the front of the field. So I think there's a lot that can be undone by drivers who are looking at their progress and thinking, I don't really want to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. I do want to note that the 88 Chevrolet racing car has gone through on the Irekanu by Velocity Racing 247. They are next to each other in terms of track, 13th and 12th on circuit. But now for Wout van Kruijsen, he's got to get a whole lap back to actually make it an official overtake for position.
Back at Jeffrey Ross now. And also Lukas Filipkowski He's looking at his mirrors, seeing a Porsche and a Aston Martin getting closer and closer, thinking, well, I might need to pick up the pace a little bit, because he also is now driving in the 203s.
No, and those 204s are going to start knocking on the door and saying you're not quite doing enough. So when you get there and see a 204.3 from William Hepworth, I would say that you are trying to consolidate 5th place and maybe pick up the pieces if those in 2nd, 3rd and 4th decide they are going to get a little bit busy out there on track. So I don't think that this is going to be the sort of race where you are going to see people sit back down and wait for the last lap of the race to go and make it happen. I think they are going to be aggressive, they are going to look at moves, and it is a case of, are you going to be able to hold the same pace of what they're doing in front? Answer to that for the moment is no, they're not. So Jeffrey Ross is very happy in that 3rd place for Unlucky with the Who's, and knowing that as the championship leaders, although they're not fighting directly for the race win at the moment, they are doing what they need to keep the championship lead. And that is the mark of a great team and a great driver, is the fact that you're able to hold that pace and make it happen. Now, they've forced FCR to do their fastest lap of the race, a 2:03.5 from Lucas Filipkowski. Jeffrey Ross still takes 4/10 off of that with the fastest lap of the race again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also something we see more and more in endurance racing, where normally you think, well, we have to think about the material, we have to think about tires, we have to think about fuel, we have to think about finishing the race. It's also something you see in 24 hours of Daytona or Le Mans in average. It's all about a 24 hours full gas racing, and that's also this. Of course, it's a 3 hours race. We are calling it endurance, but if you look at endurance in real life, 3 hours is just a sprint race. As we see somebody out, that's Aby Vermeulen. Hey, where is he? Is he gone? Yes, he is. Oh, no, Aby Vermeulen gone with the Corvette, and I think that's going to be a disconnect from him.
Yeah, that was coming out the exit of the Forest Elbow, and it's so easily done. It is the sim racing equivalent of the engine going boom. As we all know, the engine can always go boom in cars like these if the engine temperatures are too high, and Jeffrey Ross absolutely ragdolling that Porsche down the hill. But Donk Racing Team, they'd worked hard from the pit lane to get back up to 8th place, and it looks like that drop then for them is going to cost them a lot of time. Move now into position. Filipkowski, I don't think's got the launch needed coming out of the Forest Elbow, and so that Porsche is going to absolutely fly along this straight. Here comes the chance though, as they go side by side. They're going to have to work hard for it at the chase. This is going to be tight between them, but it is Filipkowski on the outside, just not given enough room to make it work. Jeffrey Ross up to 2nd now and has the responsibility of chasing down Endurotech and Jonas Hofstadter.
Yeah, indeed, a beautiful overtake there from Jeffrey Ross as they both go a little bit wide. And this is the moment where Raul Lopez Jimenez also has to say, okay, fine, now I need to pick up the pace also, because this is the moment that I need to stay with Jeffrey Ross also, with the pit stops upcoming.
And so with those pit stops on the horizon, and I mean on the horizon, about 6 minutes away for the majority of those drivers, I would look out and go, right, where do I need to be placing myself? We know that Endurotech had themselves a very early stop by comparison to those around, an extra lap, and those extra laps could be all the difference by the time they get to the end, but that might just be a case of driving styles and the damage that they had. So if Connor, Raul Lopez with a moment there at the cutting, just cannot get any drive through the middle of the corner. I think clipped the apex there on the inside and just about avoided it there as the back stepped out. So full gas, now drop themselves off the back of this group and back over towards FCR SimSport Team 2. But William Hepworth now has been given himself something to chase.
Yeah, absolutely. That's also something that the drivers have, and you see that car getting bigger and bigger. That's when you get also more ambitious. Well, right now the gap under a second with that small mistake that Raul Lopez Jimenez did. And let's see how this is going to unfold with, as you said, the pit stops coming. I think this is also the moment maybe the tires are going to play a part.
Well, I wonder for Endurotech whether Jonas Hofstadter is more efficient with the way that he drives the car compared to Connor Franson, whether Franson wasn't able to hit the hour, but Jonas Hofstadter can, might be a difference maker of whether they can win this race without needing an extra stop or not. It's dependent on whether you need to go down into the Lifton Coast or not out there. So there are a lot of questions that are still needing to be having responses to over the course of this race, and FCR know it, and unlucky with the Who's are absolutely flying. Now Noah Stefan here is 3 laps down at this moment. Give them a lot of credit for the way that they're going about this racing here. They are really trying to put what they can on the board to get their finish, and the Donk Racing team officially have Ebby Vermeulen back in the car again, so Vermeulen will have the chance now to get back out and racing. It has cost them though 2 laps.
Yeah, indeed. As Gina Huri, Olaf Oldhoff went a little bit wide. Let's see what happens there. I think it's going to be a carbon copy of what he's done previously in a couple of laps ago. A little bit too wide there into the gravel trap. Again, putting a lot of debris on the track there. And that's also all these drivers have to take accounted for.
Yeah, they've got a couple laps before that clears itself up, and the majority of the gravel that is deposited on the circuit is discarded, but it does make life treacherous. It's like leaving a bag of marbles like you're watching Home Alone, and you're watching the 2 robbers fall down the stairs when you have a moment on the brakes. So it is a very sketchy moment for some of these drivers, but it is part of iRacing systemable updates that this isn't going to be like any other racing game out there on the platforms. It is very much a case of the track will evolve in a way that other racing titles just simply can't.
Yeah, absolutely, and in that regard, it's also more and more realistic. Of course, if you look at real life, if someone goes to this gravel trap, a lot of gravel has been put on the track, and if you are going over that again, you really can hear the gravel stones hit the car and hit the underside of the car. And also when you go over it, the grip that you have is almost nothing.
And so if you've got almost no grip at all to work with, it's going to be tough. Now into the pits off the back goes Gardigo Racing. So Gabriel Ardigo will depart off of this group and try and make that stop. So they're 2.5 minutes short at this moment in time. Jeffrey Ross, first driver now to jump into the 2:02 bracket, and on that last lap took 0.7 of a second out of Team Endurotech. Now this is a big amount of time that they are trying to hunt down at this stage, and Endurotech are going to take note of this just before the pit stop, that Porsche is flying and has 1 in 10, which is chasing them down.
Yeah, absolutely. We're almost hitting qualifying times, I would say. It's so close for Jeffrey Ross. Great timing from him. And also, right now, the time of Raul Lopez Jimenez has stabilized. Has made, of course, a little mistake a couple of laps ago. And now the gap between him and Filip Koski is around 5 seconds. As Gustavo Stefano still in the pit lane, waiting for his car to fill up. And here we have the other BMW of Ewout van Kruisen on 12th position. As Gustavo Stefano out of the pit box, still in the car, and he's going to finish the race.
Yep, so he jumps back in. Now they are short by about 2 minutes out there, so they're really going to have to work to avoid the splash and dash late on, but for the moment, FCR Simsport just cannot catch in the way that this race is going. They know that they've got to try and keep the pace with the fastest car out there, but that Porsche is rapid at the moment, and Jeffrey Ross is trying to prove it, building a gap just before the pit window. Jonas Hofstadter will hit the hour mark, and that is huge in terms of what Endurotech need, because they are now back on schedule on their pit stop cycle, and they can now make it to the end on 1 more pit stop if Hofstadter is the one in behind the wheel. So these are critical laps at the moment in this race, and it's giving Endurotech a huge shot of victory now.
Yeah, absolutely, great job, which means they have actually saved out 2 laps with fuel. And I'm curious, because the lap times are not that bad at all, right? From Jonas Hofstadter. Still a 2:03.5, so it looks like he's still pushing a lot, actually. But still managed to save some fuel. That's really good for him.
And it'll be the nature of the driving style. What you often seem to find as well in terms of racing action, Dennis, is the fact that drivers who are out there, who have the ability to sit down and say, I am really quick, also are really good at saving fuel, because they take the path of least resistance. They take the line that doesn't need them to short shift down and shift back up again and use all the fuel and be extra heavy on the brakes. It's frustrating for drivers who use up more fuel because of that, but that's just the nature of racing. The better you get, the better a fuel saver you become, as there is Jonas Hofstadter working his way down the hill into the Forest Elbow and maybe eyeing up a final pit stop of the race.
Yeah, I'm curious if he's going to do it this lap. I hope for him, especially for his pace that he's showing right now, that he can do one more lap. Same can also be said from Jeffrey Ross. Jeffrey Ross, who is also pushing now hard in his Porsche, still in the low 203s. And Gina Huri and Olaf Oldhoff are the next drivers who are going to make their pit stop, their last pit stop of today. What is Jonas Hofstadter going to do? Is he going to the pit lane? Yes, he does indeed. He's going to the pit lane now, which means his last pit stop is now upcoming. And what is Jeffrey Ross going to do?
I'd imagine coming with him, and that is exactly what we see. Lucas Filipkowski will now make his mark and jump in. Raul Lopez Jimenez will jump. William Hepworth will make the call. So everybody in then for their final stops. Casper who has been quiet there in the Irecanu by Velotti Racing 127, will be the next car to keep in mind to see whether they go a little bit longer, but they're a bit of a ways away by comparison. And what will be telling is who jumps in. Olivier Althoff back in the car. So too, as we look, Luc van Wijngaarden is back in the Ferrari. And then Connor Franson rejoins in for Endurotech, making that call. Raymond Denit jumps in for Unlucky with the Who's Racing, and Oliver Rosqvist is back in for FZR. They now for the first time have Adrian Centurion in at full gas green, and then over at FZR, Tobias de Rompf gets back in behind the wheel.
Yeah, indeed, and Tobias Rompf is maybe a name we should take for account for eventually a top 3 position. We know what happened with him, and he's still hungry for that podium place. Conor Franson now out of the pit lane. Let's see, it's Raymond Denit. Yeah, indeed, Raymond Denit now also out of pit lane. Ooh, almost hit there another car. Luckily for him, no problems. But he's behind the car now, and that could be an issue for the upcoming corners.
Well, we'll need to get the clearance and use the slipstream to advantage. Hype Racing and Irecanu are in the pits at the moment, but with Anthony Sieber up to speed at the moment with his car, Raymond Denit is going to need to try and really make sure he works himself around, and that's wide from Tobias de Rompf on cold tyres, so struggling a little bit here coming out of the pits, and we'll need a couple laps to get them up to optimal operating temperatures as Adrian Centurion now starts to pull himself away.
Yeah, indeed. As you said, Oliver Oldhoff back in the car fighting with Luc van Wijngaarden. Now these drivers both know each other, of course, from the beginning of the race. It was both of their teammates who fought the second part of this game. And now it's back with Oliver Oldhoff and Luc van Wijngaarden. Again, the red Porsche against the purple grey Ferrari. Let's see what Oldhoff can do. Is he going for the overtake here? Trying on the outside, but he has to try it on the inside. That's the only way how he can do this. Or is he going to play the long game? No, he's not going to play the long game. He's going for it. And he's missing the corner, overshooting just by ever so slightly. And look at that. It's Luc van Wijngaarden who says, well, thank you very much. I'm taking the position back.
Well, it's needed, and they'll have the bit of traffic around them to hit the pit. So Wout van Kruijsen will now make a call down into the pit lane. So that will give them the clearance in terms of their battle that they look at. But for the moment, Olivier Althoff here is going to be in a very tough position. Luc van Wijngaarden here has done a wonderful job of just staving off the challenge there.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
That
Mika
took Mika
Hoekstra,
Hoekstra.
heavy damage there in the mountain. That looks like turn 5 where that's gone wrong, and you don't often see issues over at that section of the road. We'll take another look. So he was through turn 4 without any troubles, and I just don't think he got the power through turn 4 the way he wanted to, and the car just not loaded in the rear with enough downforce, just snaps on him.
Yeah, indeed, and it's a very strange way, but indeed it snaps him in, a tank slapper into the wall, and that's big damage for Mika Hoekstra, who I think, of course, definitely needs to pit because that car is looking very sick.
It will do. No front on it. Not enough for the black and orange mechanical flag. They do build these cars to really work here on iRacing for a fair while, but for Mika Hoekstra, that is going to be one where I believe the American term for that is a modified.
Yeah, absolutely. Never heard of weight reduction, bro, they say, but that's just a little bit too much, and you're going to have a lot of understeer in a car looking like this.
Well, there isn't much you can do about it. Mika Hoekstra, I think he's due for the pits and was trying to stay out longer anyway, and I was just out, so I think they're going to have to try and work with this now until the end of this race. So that car is going to be limping about, but there is not much more you can do except drive with what you've got, and they will have to play with those cards up until the end of the race. So that will give a good chance then for Picobello and NXTGP to maybe have something to race for here for what they are 8th and 9th at the moment. They could go to 7th and 8th places with the way that that has unlocked for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Back at looking at Oliver Olthoff driving for the NXTGP 225 car. Driving with number 64, by the way. As we are on board now with him, front the grey Ferrari of Luc van Wijngaarden. Let's see what Olthoff can do. Of course, he tried it, went a little bit wide, so the tires would be a little bit dirty. Now it's all, of course, back. Oh, look at that. Look for Wijngaarden, who close he is with the wall. Luckily for him, no big issues there. As Oliver Olthoff slowly but steady creeping again. Slowly against the car of Luc van Wijngaarden. Every
corner is going to be a little boon, and you can imagine that you just pitched your fishing rod out there and you've got the hook on the back of the spoiler of Luc van Wijngaarden, and you're just trying to reel in every single corner that you can, every single place that you can. And looking at the times at the moment here, Endurotech look like they're in a very good position. Connor Franson in the 204s, Denit's first lap time a 5.7, a 4.7 for Roskvist there for FCR, and Motorsport Green 5.6, and FCR Simsport Team 2 5.5. So I think Raymond Denit either needs to get the hurry up message, or he just can't match the pace of what his teammate did in the first 2 hours. So they'll have a car that they can bring home, but they are going to try and hold on to it in the late stages. Oliver Roskvist now has a real great shot to get FCR back into second place.
Yeah, absolutely. But also Raymond Denit, of course, still has to get used to the car and the track in these conditions. So it might be, of course, that we see the need slowly but steady also go into the 204s as he gets more and more comfortable with the car.
Roskvist back in again, of course, after doing the opening stint of this race and knowing that they are down into the final hour. 51 minutes, a 3.4. Brilliant lap time there from the Endurotech team, who are now trying to waltz away with this race, especially knowing that track is down almost 10 degrees from where it started, now at just 35 degrees Celsius. It's now in the ideal operating temperature for these drivers. A 5.3 then from Raymond Denit, a 3.8 by Oliver Roskvist, and he's now got enough pace to figure out a way to move by Unlucky with the Who's Racing. This is big between the 11 and the 8 because FCR are trying to prove that they are championship material. They were third in the opener of the season. They want to move up to second here today and keep themselves even on points with Team Endurotech. Driving aggressively in towards the left of the cutting at turn 4. Good hug of the barriers there from the 11, but the pressure is very much about them forcing to go as quick as they can. Looks like another moment for Olivier Althoff.
Yeah, indeed. I think he went a little bit too wide there again over the curbstone. Look at that! Oh, they are so lucky that this is just virtual, not in real life, because that really can hurt your back in those jumps.
They certainly can. You can just imagine just how much feel that you'd have in the bottom of your steering wheel. Imagine a piston underneath it that just decides to punch it every time you go up like that. So you're hoping that you don't crack the floor as you jump on over through those sections like that. These cars are sturdy, but you know, you've got to be really careful about how aggressive you go with the curves. But the chase on right now for FCR and Oliver Rosqvist, who is now keeping himself steady within the range of Raymond Denit and trying to get that moment. They've got about 7 seconds here to Adrian Centurion, so it's not a case like they've got all the time in the world to construct this pass, but they do have enough time at this moment to maybe just understand where the 11 is placed in the car, find where the weakness is. It really doesn't help when Team Endurotech are running their fastest laps of the race. A little wiggle of the exit of Murray's, and this is going to open up a defensive line taken. Rosqvist was never going to go for that move into turn 1, so a little bit defensive there, or overly defensive by Denit, but now here comes the climb up the hill.
Yeah, indeed, and the gap is now around a 10th of a second. This is the first time that Oliver Rosqvist can go for the attack. He chooses the outside. It's Raymond Denit who chooses to defend the inside. This is the moment. Oliver Rosqvist on the outside. Is he going to make it stick? The answer is no, because he's running out of road.
Well, Ollie Rosqvist is trying what he can to get this move. It's tough for Raymond Denit.
Oh, no!
Denit's left the door open. A dive up at the cutting. You see the opportunity, you lunge for it, and Oliver Rosqvist was not going to spend another lap stuck behind on the mountain. Great pass for FCR, who moved themselves back into second.
Yeah, indeed. It was Raymond Denit. Let's go again. Who went, I think, a little bit too wide, brake a little bit too late there, and that's the moment that Oliver Rosqvist said, "Neil, thank you very much, I'm going to take P2 now." And let's see in terms of pace if he can go slowly but steady towards the Team Endurotech auto. Well, don't forget about that. It's 17 seconds right now that he has to make up. It looks like Raymond Denit doesn't have quite the pace actually to match also the FCR Sim Sport car of Oliver Rosqvist.
So, as far as Raymond Denit is concerned, he's going to be looking at this and going, right, I've just got to hold on. And this is Liam de Kock through the final corner, who just pushes it a bit too wide. So be very careful. Those barriers down at Murray's corner, they do reach out and they do bite. And I can confirm now that Donk Racing are officially out of the race now. So they have found themselves down in the pits, and I think as they were going about it, they realised there's not really much point in getting back out there in this race, and so they have pulled the car behind the shed and basically said, day done. Noah Stefan, oh, that's the widest we've seen anybody go wide there at McPhillamy.
Absolutely. As we are back with, well, I would say the fight, but it's not really a fight anymore, especially if you look at the lap times. It's a 2:04.7 for Oliver Rosqvist and Raymond Denit with a 2:05.82.
And so the difference is now really making themselves known at this stage of the race. This is a very tough battle that they will now have to try and navigate themselves by. They've got to just hold themselves steady. They know how important it is going to be to try and hold their ground and say, this is what we've got. Remember, your points winner here today will score 56 championship points. It's 54 for second, it is 52 for third and 50 for fourth. Remember, there are bonus points in place, so it's not going to be a direct tie for everyone. The pole position holds a point and the fastest lap holds a point. So there are those that are going to have that in the back of the mind as well. So 49 points if you finish in P5, and then it's 1 point increment down after that. So in terms of how they point score today, Endurotech are going to be looking very good, but Unlucky with the Who's might still hold championship lead if they're able to get that fastest lap bonus point, which they currently have both of the bonus points available, and those are two very important championship points.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go back and watch the fight between Oliver Rosquist and Raymond de Niet a little bit early in the race. This is the first time he's going to try for it. Trying on the outside, then he ran out of road. That's the moment where he say, alright, fine, I'm going for the overtake. And this is the moment where Raymond de Niet is braking a little bit too late, making the car wide. And that's the moment that Oliver Rosquist said, thank you very much, I'm going to take P2 now. And see you later, as I'm getting some notifications of a crash from Noah Stefan. What happened there? Oh, this is the point where you definitely don't want to crash. Is he going to hit the inside wall? No, he's not going to the inside wall. Oh, that's a little bit too much. And there he hits the wall.
That's tough because, you know, they've done everything right, trying to keep it down through the hill, and then you get to the Big Dipper, and if you're anything out of shape through there, the car's just going to snap no matter what you do, because it's such a massive depreciation, huge slam against the wall for Olivier Althoff, and that's going to put a massive dent into what they're trying to do there at NXTGP. You'll look around at Picabello and Luc van Wijngaarden, and they have got a great bit of work now, and that, I would say, is a boon, not a bane for them. So they'll be looking at that going, brilliant, and they'll also know that in the final stages of this race, they are at threat of being lapped by your overall leaders, so they will have to try and allow the likes of Conor Franson through in what I would describe as the next 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, these drivers are driving now 2 hours and 16 minutes, of course, not non-stop. There has been, of course, driver swaps, but this is also the moment that you might feel a little bit fatigued. And this is the moment where you are getting tired and maybe not so, well, let's say, not so awake anymore. And the walls are getting closer and closer then.
Yeah, you feel like this track just sort of sucks the life out of you. You just squeeze in through each of these corners and go, I'm not too happy with the way that this track goes, because you know that every time you're going through these corners, you know, you can just think, oh, I've got, you know, 3 car widths of room, and suddenly you'll feel like you've only got 2.5. It's one of those circuits where the more that you make a mistake, the more that the walls stare at you through a number of these corners. This would probably be one of, if not the last worry that they'll have to deal with over the course of this. Picabello and NXTGP, by the way, they're closing about 2.5 to 3 seconds a lap on Hype Racing and Mika Herkstra, who, remembers, got the damage. But the key here is that Endurotech's got to get by these 3 cars, and once that you got Conor Franson, and he's done that, he's home free. He's only got to race against himself between now and the end of this race. So this is the final, I would say, stumbling block that Conor Franson can possibly find himself against.
Yeah, absolutely. As Oliver Althoff is still fighting with Luc van Wijngaarden. Slowly but steady, blue flags are going to show, of course. Now don't forget, blue flags doesn't mean you need to get out of the way. It means a quicker car is coming and you are going to be the back marker in this case. Oh my goodness, that was so close from Conor Franson. I thought he was going to hit the wall there. Of course, Franson also now is going to get some understeer, and there he does hit the wall. You can't do that too much, because if you have a bent steering wheel, that's going to have some issues, as this is maybe also the moment that Oliver Althoff is going to attack Luc van Wijngaarden. Let's see, he is in the slipstream now. Gap is around 0.2 of a second. Also Althoff looking in his mirrors, seeing the Ford of Conor Franson. You don't want to be the Esteban Ocon in this one and hitting the leader. Let's see what Oliver Althoff can do now.
But what you can say as well for Conor Franson is that because he is jumping up on the rear of cars, is running a little deep, there goes Olivier Althoff, and that's going to put Van Wijngaarden very happily into where he needs to be, and that is to give himself a little gap as the advisory blue flags are in play because we're running on IMSA rule set blue flags rather than on formula style blue flags, which are mandatory to the tune of 4 marshal posts before you get penalised. I think Conor Franson knows how tough this is and is going to get the clearance then straight on through here from Olivier Althoff, who lifts off and realises I'm going to need a bit of help to try and get myself up to the next driver. So that's going to be in the back of the mind. And also what is worth talking about here too, as they're going through, unlucky with the Who's, can't get the pace up. Adrian Centurion has got that gap down to 3 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's also watch that. As Oliver Althoff, I think he has to get a little bit more closer to Conor Franson, because then he can also do the overtake when Luc van Wijngaarden is going out of his way for our leader in the race.
Althoff following steadily here, using the Porsche and gravity to advantage, and Noah Stefan back out and then back around. Then in the Turbo Toaster, who at the moment looks like it's got a bit of faulty electrics or something in that toaster at this moment, through the final corner, just unable to put the power down with any form of confidence, and so got through the majority of the corner. And it's the way that they hit the curb there, really, Dennis, that I find interesting. I call it compression damping. It's where you have the tyres leave the circuit, they come back, and then effectively as the car oscillates on the floor trying to find grip, the car just loves to snap and turn around. You see it in so many different bits of machinery here on iRacing.
Yeah, absolutely. The car is actually jumping. That's the moment when you get on throttle. That was also quite close for Noah Stefan. That's the moment you go on throttle and the car doesn't have, of course, any form of grip, and you fully go on throttle. And the car is, of course, rear-wheel drive, meaning the rear will snap out indeed.
And so for Noah Stefan, down 4 laps overall. The Turbo Toaster will need a new turbocharger at the moment as they focus on 3 retirees from this race then. Here as we're on lap 68.
Wait, what happened there? Or is this still replay? No, it's not replay. It's Oliver Althoff who unlapped himself from Conor Franson. That's interesting to see.
I think Franson might have had a slowdown penalty somewhere or the like, just got a little bit too deep through the final corner and allowed that car to go back through. So Althoff then regains that position and the gap to the front becomes 15 seconds. So I wonder here whether Franson is struggling with a bit of damage, whether he's clipped a wall somewhere again over the last lap or so and is there, or this is a case of I have to drive to this pace because my driving style indicates that I can't make it home on fuel.
Now that's going to be very interesting indeed, because with a 204 and a 202 we are talking about 2 seconds a lap, meaning in around 7 laps Oliver Rosquist could have been on the back of Conor Franson.
So FCR, they've got hope here, and with that gap just tumbling down, I wonder here if Conor Franson's dealing with something. We'll take a look then on board, and the steering wheel is pretty much dead straight. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the steering wheel, so to speak. I think this is just a case of having to try and manage here with a little bit of Lyco to get to the end. Hoekstra now loses the place to Picabello and does so with the distinct lack of power on the straights, with the front just completely showing it's very much a face into the wind at the moment for Hype Racing. So Picabello get their move and NXTGP will be next.
Yeah, absolutely. Mika Hoekstra now really has it hard in this car. A 207.6 and a 204.6 for Oliver Althoff, meaning that Althoff will be there at the back of the car of Hoekstra in the end of this lap. And I think you might be right, because Conor Franson's pace at 207.9. What is going on with Conor Franson? Is this indeed the moment he has to let go? But that's quite big a let go, because the lifting is a lot right now. Let's hear actually on board with him. Let's see also the dashboard. Oh yeah, that's definitely lifting coach what he's doing there. And we're talking now about a gap of 4 seconds a lap between Conor Franson and Oliver Rosquist.
Well, this aggressive of a save at the moment this is Enduro Tech at risk of losing the race outright. There's two ways they could have gone about this. They could have done this in such a way where they could have had a splash and dash right at the end, but they would have had to have the lane transit time and cost themselves about 2 seconds of stop time to go through. So they could have either built the gap or gone for the aggressive lift and coast, and they've gone for the lift and coast option. So Connor Franson has to manage that gap at the front of this field, keep the pace up, but also save the fuel. So this is where a good driver has to try and figure out a way to make this happen. You don't like being in a position like this, but Enduro Tech, with the way that Connor Franson drives, is now stuck in this position. FCR and Oliver Roskvist will now be saying, I've got a great chance, as off the road, and heavy into the barriers goes Senna Bokhoven.
Yeah, there's definitely some damage for Bokhoven as we are back on board with Connor Franson. The gap now between him and Rosquist is 11 seconds. And Oliver Oldhoff also not quite actually going towards Mika Hoekstra. The gap is still 2 seconds.
Well, I'm looking at the time left. If you lose a second a lap from here, that's a bit better on a 2:04.4. If you lose a second a lap from here between now and the end of this race, FCR Simsport will catch them. So it's going to be close, but there will be about 5 minutes left for FCR to really make that chase down, and that 2:03 flat, that 2:03.1 is certainly going to be there. 1.3 seconds on that last lap. Raymond Denit has improved his pace now to a 2:04 flat. Adrian Centurion on a 2:03.3 has got that gap under 2 seconds now, and look at Full Gas Motorsport Green. They are desperate to get by.
Yeah, which means it's still not done, as we are just over half an hour to go in this race, as we almost completed then the 3 hours here of Mount Panorama Bathurst. There's still a fight going on, a fight for the lead, as it's now around 10th seconds, as Adrian Fernandez and Raymond Denit is now around 1.5 seconds. And slowly but steady, Fernandez Century is going towards the car of Raymond Denit.
This is about nerve. Whose nerve is going to crack first? Out of the many drivers here who are trying to do what they can. For Adrian Centurion, he knows that he is just slowly hunting down a driver who is not as quick as the co-driver who took the start of this race, qualified the car. Raymond Denit, he has been waiting very patiently to try and make this race work, and it has been tough, to say the very least, to make it happen. For Centurion, this has been a good attempt by Full Gas Motorsports, running with 3 different drivers out there. They're doing a really good job. And there, speaking of other drivers doing a really good job, Luke van Wijngaarden now up into 7th position with a large gap over Hoekstra and Althoff. And Franson now sees that gap, and it is 10 seconds.
Is 10 seconds going to be enough for the remaining of this race? As we see Oliver Oldhoff slowly but steady now going towards Mika Hoekstra. Hoekstra, of course, who has no straight line pace anymore in the car. Car heavily damaged, and that's the moment where Oliver Oldhoff goes by Mika Hoekstra. And Mika Hoekstra now back in the 9th position. For him, it's a good news, because the gap between him and Gustavo Stefano is 33 seconds. So I think he will manage that.
I think he'll manage that too, but it will depend in terms of pace. So Gardiga Racing are doing 2:04s at the moment, and Hype Racing at this stage doing 2:05s, 2:06s. So 2 seconds a lap here to be lost is just about enough to hold on. So they'll be happy with that at the moment. A 2:02.8 from Adrian Centurion on that last lap. Fastest lap for the team over the course of this race. And Raymond Denit now, I think, is really underneath a lot of pressure. That Porsche is not the same in his hands compared to what Adrian Centurion can get out of the Aston Martin, that just is so nimble right now. It's flying through these corners, over at McPhillamy Park after the metal grey, and searching again, and now down the hill. Watch this gap turn to nothing.
Yeah, indeed, we saw Raymond Denit just sliding with his car. The car sliding everywhere, as we are now looking from the backside of Raymond Denit. We can see the full gas motorsport green Aston Martin getting bigger and bigger. And this is the moment where Slipstream can go now. Let's see what Adrian Fernandez Centuri can do. The gap under 0.2 of a second now. Is this a moment where P3 is going to be losing from Raymond de Niet? Is he going to lose P3? As Fernandez Centuri is now looking. Is he going for the inside? Yes, he is going for the inside. Who dares to break the latest? It's Raymond de Niet who breaks later than Fernandez Centuri. And right now, nothing has changed. But I don't think that's going to be the case for the next couple of laps.
Centurion waits and waits and waits and tries to unlock this pass. Now needing the drive off of the exit. This is where you're going to start thinking about, okay, it's not just how I make this move, it's when I make it. On the brakes then in towards Hell Corner, turn number 1, needing the launch through there. And again, that's a car length between them and a couple more needed. So for the moment, Raymond de Niet, I think, will be safe up the hill as Adrian Centurion will hold himself then to a very strong caliber at this moment. He knows what he needs to do. He can't get the pass here, but he'll have to wait now for the drive of Quarry.
Yeah, let's stick with this one. The fight for third position. The last step of the podium between Raymond de Niet and Adrian Fernandez Centuri. Lap times of Centuri still in the 203s, 203.8, but this is also the moment that his lap times, of course, will go around the same as Raymond de Niet. Let's see what's going to happen. From this point on, overtaking is going to be very, very difficult.
But it's all about getting the run down the hill. Any mistake down through the S's here, in towards the Big Dipper, that's going to be where you're going to find the chance to make the pass. Adrian Centurion is very comfortable with where he lies himself, and now seeing that wider line taken by Raymond de Niet. This is where you can get a good launch, but it's Porsche versus the Aston Martin. The Aston Martin's maybe only weakness today has been straight line speed. So could this be for Centurion a chance to get through? He's only got a couple clicks in a straight line. 267, 275 now. Gets just the launch late. Now has to think about the outside. Raymond de Niet covers off the line. Does exactly what is required, but now it's about, can you pick it up off the exit, maybe have a go at Murray's Corner. It's held very defensive to the inside. Centurion goes to the outside, a little dipper tire into the grass, and Raymond de Niet holds his station with 28 minutes to go.
Look at the time of Oliver Rosquist, a 2:02.64. Also, Conor Franzen now back in the 2:03, so I think this fuel saving has worked now. And also Conor Franzen can slowly but steady pick up the pace again, because the gap is now 8.5 seconds.
But still has to get by Olivier Althoff. Still has to navigate Luc van Wijngaarden, if at all possible. So there are still those stumbling blocks again for Franzen. Knowing that Mika Hoekstra's there, knowing that Rosquist is at 8.5 seconds and desperately trying to chase down this gap. And you've still got third to try and decipher, and Full Gas Motorsport, you better believe they desperately want to gain that place and keep the gap close at the top of the championship. Rosquist then being very much in a case of parity over the course of this lap compared to Endurotech, so they've given themselves the margin, and NXTGP have just picked up the black flag penalty, so I would understand that's incident points, and they're going to have to depart into the pits, and that then for Conor Franzen will be one less stumbling block in front of them. Franzen closing them down along this straight, and this will be about whether they move to one side or not, or whether Franzen's going to decide to go through. He's going to lift and coast behind, and very cleverly so, but his drafting partner that's giving him a tiny bit more fuel to work with is going to have to depart for the lane and will pull over to the left-hand side to take that drive through.
And he's not the only one, because also Luc van Wijngaarden has 16 off-tracks now. 16 penalty points, which means if he's going to get the 17th, and there he is! No! That was very close for the Bicobello BV car, because he is also on sharp now.
look at Centurion on the outside. We're going to have to cut back to it because Raymond Denis is really trying to get the elbows out here, make life difficult for this third place, and Adrian Centurion is trying to do everything he can, working along the main straight in towards turn number 1. Still can't quite get the clearance required through the middle of the turn, just needs to hook up onto the rear, get this drive up the hill, heading over towards the quarry turn of turn number 2, and then the pass can be found. Adrian Centurion trying everything he can. Again, Raymond Denis goes all the way to the inside, moves across to take the natural line away from Centurion. This is a masterclass on how to defend.
Yeah, don't forget how Raymond Denis lost his position against Oliver Rosquist. Again, a little bit wide there. But it was Adrian Fernandez Centurion who has the gap now of around 0.6 of a second. But this was also the first real attack that Adrian Fernandez Centurion did.
It might be the first real big get out and go get it style of move, but you know that you are running down in terms of time. You know how critical these laps are being. Every time you spend a lap waiting, that's another 2 minutes off the clock. The gap in the lead now 7.8 seconds for Franson versus Rosquist, and so that is maybe starting to fade a bit in the way of Endurotech, but every lap right now is going to be scrutinized under a magnifying glass. Adrian Fernandez here is going to be sat down, and Centurion waits and waits and waits and realizes Denis this time has enough of a launch.
Meanwhile, Oliver Althoff still in the pit lane, by the way, so I don't know how long that penalty was. I thought it was a drive-through penalty, but it's a little bit longer than just a drive-through penalty. Meanwhile, Fernando Centurion on his way against Raymond Denis.
I think it's a retirement for them because Althoff's gone out the car, and so that will be then done. FCR take the fastest lap bonus point on a 2:02.4. Desperate to try and chase this gap down to 7.5 seconds here at this moment in time, sitting with just 24 minutes on the clock. To my math, that's going to be about 12 laps to try and chase down the gap of 7.5 seconds. Raymond Denis still keeping himself there in that third place. They know they're fighting for third, and the one thing they'll be keeping in the back of their mind, if these two tangle together, they're going to allow FCR back into this one for potentially 2 cars on the podium. Not close enough this time into quarry.
Yes, indeed. Adrian Fernandez Centurion still on the fight. Is he going to try it on the inside here? No, he's not going to try it on the inside here. Still has to wait. Again, Raymond Denis very early on the break. And Fernando Centurion has to wait again. But the gap is now closer and closer. But this is the moment where overtaking is going to be difficult. There is only one line possible here as we are on the way against to suffer towards sector 2. Let's see, the gap is now 0.2 of a second. Watch out with that curbstone. That's also going good for all these drivers. And this is the moment where Fernando Centurion has to line up his car. A little bit moment there for Fernando Centurion. You see the gap is getting a little bit bigger now, but this is the moment. The moment that the exit is oh so important. And now he has to do the slipstream his work. But right now the gap of 0.4 of a second. I don't think he's going to do the overtake, Jake.
I think this is a case of when do you want to go rather than should you. This is going to be where Raymond Denis is holding a very good defence, and Adrian Centurion will know that. And so with each and every single lap, each and every single corner, you start thinking about where you can go and gain that pass. Great response by Endurotech, by the way. A fastest lap of a 2:02.3. Connor Franson, I think, has got himself on go mode at this moment. He knows he's good to go. Another little search by Centurion's not going to get the job done. But you just got to make sure you give yourself enough of a look. Gets into the mirror for turn number 1, falls back into line at Hell's Corner, and now here comes the drive back off the exit again. Centurion needs to find a way to unlock a pass on that Porsche. Struggling to manage to do so, holding very much steady, but now every time he thinks about, can I get close enough to make this move, it's covered, and he goes all the way to the inside and takes what he wants. Lisks over to the left-hand side, and so if you're even thinking about the outside line, it's not on because only a car width is given on that outside track.
Yeah, indeed. And now it is Adrian Fernandez Centurion. Maybe has to wait and not immediately attack and turn into turn 2, but has to wait for turn 3 to do the attack. Same thing as Oliver Rosquist did. Because now he only can follow the car, and you see the gap getting a little bit bigger now, then a little bit smaller. He has to see and wait, maybe put the pressure a little bit more on Raymond Denit to see if he can take the 3rd position.
If he wants it, he'll be able to take it and get it, but he knows that he's got to follow with every amount of confidence at this moment in time. This is a really tough phase. Maybe the Forest elbow might open up an opportunity, but now you can start thinking about what can you find, and this is where the drive is there, close enough this time on Conrad to go and get this move with 20 minutes about to click over left in terms of this race. Centurion now is going to get the launch, is going to get the run, heading through the fastest corner in Australian sim racing here. The chase will have to be to the outside. It's later on the brakes there again by Raymond Denit, but there's the drive off the exit, pretty much pushing through the chase, trying to get this pass done over towards Murray's. Again looking on the outside line, almost gets the clearance, and again it's just shaved off through the middle of the corner. Adrian Centurion, not much you can do. Defense all the way to the pit wall now, trying to make something happen over towards turn number 1. Centurion is trying everything, but my Centurion, you're not going to find a pass on Raymond Denit. He's a wall that cannot be taken at this moment.
Yeah, incredibly defending from Raymond Denit. And now Adrian Fernandez Centurion is going for it again. Does he have to go on the outside? Yes, but look at his defending moves. And again, it's Adrian Fernandez Centurion. Now has to play the long game. Is he going to do it now then? On the inside, is it Denit who is going to break a little bit later? Yes, he does hit the wall.
Rosquist is in the wall over at the Griffin's Mount. He was trying to chase down that gap, and he has gone into the wall, and suddenly that is going to bring everybody back closer together again. And there goes second, and there goes third.
Oh my goodness, let's watch in the replay what happens. Thank you very much. You are definitely awake. Again, Oliver Rosquist understeer, losing the rear. Oh, that's quite a hard hit there actually for Oliver Rosquist. In front and back, and that's a watch out. That was Mika Hoekstra, who had a Code Brown moment. Oh, there's so much going on right now. We have to go back now, because it's Raymond Denit, and it's Adrian Fernandez who tried it actually.
It's second and it's third now, the battle. It's 25 seconds and clearance at long last for Team Endurotech, who have outlasted FCR Esport. How much will they hurt with the moment that they've had here, just 20 minutes from time? Adrian Centurion, close again, getting in the mirrors again, getting right up underneath again, but once more, not close enough to go and get this pass, and once more trying to figure out where this move is going to come from. At a moment, Dennis, where you look down and say, is there a mistake? And there is one, and a nibble into the back, and now here comes the chance. He'll get the drive over towards turn 1. They'll be side by side, trading as much paint as they can, and Centurion gets nowhere to go in the corner.
Yeah, it was Raymond Denit who lost the rear of the car, and just a small tap from Adrian Fernandez Centurion. Luckily for both of them, no biggies. It's Oliver Rosquist, who's now also, of course, full on the attack. He still can CP2 head, don't forget that. But how much damage did that Aston Martin have?
Well, you start thinking about Tobias de Romp. He is only 8 seconds behind the number 8 FCR Sim Sport Aston Martin out there, so that still is something that could change inside of what is 17 minutes of racing left. So there is still that. Centurion is happy. Raymond Denit will be looking at this thinking he's got everything he could ask for and then some. Everybody gaggled up on the mountain, it looks like, as far as this race goes, but I would keep a very close eye on what Full Gas Motorsport Green can do, because they are already hunting that time back down that they've lost. They pushed slightly too wide though through the dipper.
Yeah, to put it in perspective, you can see now the car with number 1, that's Connor Franson, is going towards the last corner. As we are looking here with the unlocking with Hertz Green, on Hertz Racing and Full Gas Motorsports Green, still on the back straight, on the long back straight, towards the next couple of corners.
So, as they make that launch on Enduro Tech, just try and consolidate that fastest lap bonus point. Full Gas Motorsport Green, no, they've got to be like namesake at the moment. They must go full gas at this stage to keep themselves in play. Rosqvist, despite their heavy hit into the barriers at Griffin's Mount, still have themselves a shot of a podium here. They are relying on Full Gas and Unlucky with the Who's to start scrapping it out together. The championship leaders in a defensive stance against the team that finished directly behind them by a full lap over at Road Atlanta to start the season off. It now becomes a case for the team. Raymond Denis, Adrian Centurion, these two will be going at it right to the end of this race, and it's all about figure out what you can do and where you can find it. Up through the quarry corner and heading over to the cutting. Centurion back underneath.
Let's see what's going to happen. Oh, look how close he can get now at the rear of Raymond Denis. Gap again around 0.3 of a second now. Slowly but steady, getting it closer and closer and closer. This is the moment now he has to line up. Let's see what he can do. Look at Raymond Denis almost scraping the wall there as he gets closer and closer. Now, is this the moment he's going to do for the overtake here? No. We can see and hear the early lift. And now he has to wait. Now he has to wait. Wait for an optimal position at the exit of the... Ooh, look at that, by the way. Raymond Denis again scraping the wall.
So, if you're going to get that close to the wall, you know you're forcing issues and errors out there. They might be small to begin with, but they do compound and they get larger and larger. Raymond Denis now will be looking at this, thinking, what more can my Unlucky with the Who's Racing team do? Full Gas Motorsport Green are going to be sitting back saying, lovely, here comes the chance. Defensive line taken again. Oh, it's late down the inside. Centurion, he can't get it stopped. Contact between the pair, straight across the grass is going to have to go. The likes of Raymond Denis and Adrian Centurion muscles his way into second place.
Yeah, and indeed with that fight, it's now the FZR SimSport of Oliver Rosqvist who found the back of the car of Raymond Denis. Is this the moment with just under 15 minutes to go that Raymond Denis is going to be thrown off the podium? Or is Raymond Denis saying, no way, Jose Adrian Fernandez Centurion, this is my P2, I'm going to take it back now. Well, you can say what you can say, Jake, but we are going to have a fight among us.
And we're into the final 15 minutes now, and so every position is going to be scrutinised. Oliver Rosqvist, who had himself that big hit, does he have anything left in the car to make it happen? It was a late move down to the inside. There was a shuffle of contact between them. Never going to make it with having to leave room on that outside. And Raymond Denis, who rejoins the circuit fairly, look at that, the flash of the lights there that indicates I am not very happy with the way that you've conducted that. And that was very much a case of I'll push my way through into position. I wouldn't be surprised if the stewarding team will have a look at that at the end of racing.
Yeah, absolutely. Oliver Rosqvist not giving up. Lost his second position, of course, with a small damage. Was quite a big tap, but luckily for him, just small damage on the front of that Aston Martin as he is going closer and closer now towards that Porsche. And this is the moment, maybe even where Raymond Denis now, who is again scraping the wall there, now maybe a little bit frustrated. And when you are frustrated, you also can make some mistakes.
Rosqvist knows this is damage limitation, would love to get back to second if at all possible, but if that doesn't become the case, he would love to try and take third at least and put another little dent in the notch of the championship leaders. Really closes up back underneath. Under 12 minutes now to go here in this race, and you can just see that Full Gas Motorsports Green have just checked off into the distance. They are flying away by comparison here, and Raymond Denis is going to lose out on that slipstream now, and that's going to be really helpful for Oliver Rosqvist to find a way through. Any position now is going to matter more than anything else, because the later that you leave it, the less you have to do. Big wide line there by Raymond Denit through the opening corner, and this is bringing Oliver Rosqvist now the opportunity to close this gap.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see if we can have a little look at the nose cap. Oh, there he goes! There he goes! Oliver Rosqvist breaking late, and there it is. Raymond Denit losing out his podium. Is he going to go for the attack again? What a beautiful move there from Oliver Rosqvist.
The only way he was going to make that happen was by doing it late. He's seen what happens when you push side by side. He's such a good side-by-side battler that you just have to get the element of surprise in play. Raymond Denit did not scout that move coming there from Oliver Rosqvist, and Rosqvist then gets his move up into third. He leaves it to the 11th hour to make the pass, commands the apex on the inside, chucks it in and says, "That's mine, I'm going to shuffle you off your line." Brilliant stuff. Ollie Rosqvist now to third, and FCR back on the podium again.
Yeah, that's really, I don't want to make the pun, but it's really unlucky for Raymond Denit, who's doing nothing wrong, by the way. Really, really steady pace what he shows, but unfortunately for him, it's Oliver Rosqvist and Adrian Fernandez Centurion who's just a little bit faster. Now Raymond Denit, can he maybe have a last lunge, as we have only 10 minutes to go in this race?
Well, I'd worry about the flat end top speed that Ollie Rosqvist is doing, but it looks like he's pretty much at full tilt with the way that he's going. So I don't think he's got to worry about straight line speed. He got away with one then when he had his issues into the barriers. Raymond Denit then will have to keep himself in play. This is Mika Herkstra, who this is what happened right in front of the lead, or second, third and fourth, and you can see there, grabs himself over into the grass and deals with that drama then in spades. So 2:02.3 from Full Gas Motorsports Green. That is their quickest lap of the race, and Rosqvist, I don't think is going to have the legs to try and chase this down. So it's just about building a gap in the final 10 minutes of this race and consolidating what has been a wonderful performance by your top three. There's your leader, Connor Franson. What a day this is for Endurotech. They are now pulling themselves back towards championship contention.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just want to talk about Mika Hoekstra. By the way, last lap from him at 2:04.6. That's not much slower than what Luc van Wijngaarden is doing in front of him. Van Wijngaarden, who has actually 18 off tracks now, so luckily for him, I don't think he has the drive-through penalty as of yet. That's a good thing for Luc van Wijngaarden. I thought it was 20 or 21 he could do off tracks.
It's 25.
25. Oh, right. Yeah, 25. That was it. Of course, I'm talking about off tracks, not of incident points. I don't know how many incident points actually Luc van Wijngaarden has, but now he has 18 off tracks. Somebody else who is also high on the off tracks, that's Senna Bokhoven, who has 19 off tracks.
So you've got to be careful in the very late stages, because any penalty points that end and result in a drive-through penalty are added up to be 40 minutes, and there is Senna Bokhoven with another off out there in the 2:47 and just overshooting it going into the chicane. Very easily done. You miss your braking marker by 10 meters. You can go sailing on by 30 down there over at the chase. So tough for Senna Bokhoven and a learning experience, but a top 10, which I'm sure you'd take at the start of racing action today from 13th.
Absolutely. As we are back with Connor Franson, who just enters his 82nd lap now. And still driving 2:03's high. That's low, excuse me. There was a moment where we were worried, actually, weren't we, Jake? That he has to do a lot of lift and coast. But now he spread his leg and he said, well, you know what we're going to do? Spread his wings, I mean. You know what he's going to do? I'm just going to drive fast now. I'm in my rhythm now. And this is the pace I can do.
Now the lift and coast doesn't matter so much, because you can lift and coast as much as 200 meters a corner and you can still make it on the final lap. With a 26-second gap, you are going to have to conk out of fuel about halfway down Conrod to lose the race, and I mean properly be out of fuel in that section. So I think for Connor Franson, he knows that he had to do something in the middle of that stint. It gave a bit of life for FCR, but that was all it gave, life. And then when the mistake came in from pushing too hard, when he had to crank the pace back up again, he's now given himself every opportunity left. And so as he sits down, he'll be looking very intently at that clock to say whether I've got 3 or 4 laps to go in this race. Because if it is 4 laps left that he has to try and work himself over, he's going to be very mindful on a fuel gauge that will be reading fumes out there in the final goings. He knows he's got a gauge that is down to next to nothing, and there is Picabello then picking up the incident, because off the road is Senna Bokhoven too, who just about avoids it. In fact, it was Bokhoven who outbroke himself and ran into the rear of Luc van Wijngaarden, and that has caused them to serve a drive-through penalty.
Here we go again. Oh, no, indeed, you're right. Yeah, that's when you have 2 things. One, you have the off-track. 2, of course, and it's something that I actually discussed with iRacing, many iRacing races on different forums. Of course, that's something that Luc van Wijngaarden can nothing do about. He's punted on the rear. He's going straight off. Yeah, that's where you get the drive-through penalty, and Senna Bokhoven can still continue without a penalty.
Yeah, but the issue is the iRacing system is a no-fault system. It's not meant to apportion blame. It's not one of those systems that goes down and can determine who's at fault for an incident depending on who's got what points where. It's about the fact that it's a no-fault system. You're not there to go and make contact, and the whole point is that it incentivizes don't run into someone else. You'll pick up 4 incident points because of the fact that you've got yourself involved in an incident like that. Yeah, it sucks getting a penalty like that in the way that they do that, but that's the way the cookie crumbles, because unless you can find a better way to implement a system universally than that, Dennis, I don't see a better way than that.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And of course, this time around, it's Luc van Wijngaarden who has the other way. But it could also be the other way around, of course, in the upcoming races where he suddenly accidentally hits someone. And that's the driver who gets a drive-through penalty, and he can take the position of that. That's also how it works sometimes in life.
Sometimes that's the way it goes, but they will tick down and realise that they will be under 3 laps or under 4 minutes to go. So they will cross the line, and it will officially be 2 laps of racing to go. So that is a huge benefit for Conor Franson keeping the pace up. They've managed to save a lap out there extra that they would have had to do if they'd had to go lifting and coasting as more aggressively than they've had to. A 202.9 crossing the line there on that attempt, and knowing they are just 2 laps away from victory here at this moment. Adrian Centurion is there in second position. Third is Oliver Rosqvist, and the gaps now are starting to extend to 2 or 3 seconds as they go. And there is the FZ Archive, Tobias de Romp, fastest driver in practice. Haven't quite been able to.
My goodness, Oliver Rosqvist
in the wall.
How the on earth you can manage that? With 2 laps to go, Oliver Rosqvist hit the wall. He scraped him, luckily. I don't think he's got very big damage, but still, that's a very, very big warning for the FZR Sim sports car.
The good news they'd have is even if they do pick up a black and orange mechanical flag, or a meatball flag as it's known, you have 4 laps to serve it at the end of the race. You can drive with a meatball for those laps if needs be. That's just not understanding what you got to do when you got a car in front of you, taking the aero off of the front nose, not having as much work with the splitter, not having much going over the rear of the car, and just completely understeering a car that has been in trouble in this final hour. Oliver Rosqvist just about gets away with one.
Yeah, absolutely. Raymond Niet around 3 seconds behind. It's Luc van Wijngaarden who's the car who's directly behind the Oliver Rosqvist, the car of FZR Sim Sport. He's very close actually to the car, and that's Luc van Wijngaarden who's going very wide there. Lucky for him, managed to get it back on track, as also Mika Hoekstra went a little bit wide. Still doing quite okay lap times, I have to admit. But there we go. Towards just 1 lap to go. Well, is it 1 lap to go? Yeah, it's going to be 1 lap to go. For Conor Franson in the final corner. Then on his way to start-finish to enter his final lap. And what an amazing race Team Eurotech has. There is the white flag. Last lap to go for Conor Franson and Team Endurotech.
This has been a day in which you sit down and say what gets you to the front. It was a very fast, opening first 30 minutes of this race. You had to work hard to get up to the front of the field, and Endurotech had to do everything in their power to make it happen. They did have that clip against the wall. That made life tough for Connor Franson. Had to hand over the car just before the hour mark to Jonas Hofstadter, who steadied the ship, righted momentum, and built them that margin that they needed of 12 seconds. It then was a case of could they be chased down by FCR and Oliver Roskvist, and ultimately on a day like today, it was Roskvist who cracked under the pressure rather than Endurotech, who will at this moment endure out over the Griffin's Mount, and for the final time we'll get to see the vista views going over Metal Grate and now into McPhillamy Park, seeing Peter Brock's skyline and knowing that 26-second margin at the front of the field is one that is going to mean so much to them by the end of this race. Down through the Big Dipper, trying to throw everything left on the circuit that you can, and now the Forest Elbow. Now you can breathe because you've only got 1 or 2 braking zones left at the end of this lap. They know with unlucky with the Who's Racing Porsche being down in 4th position, and with their 4th place they took in the opening round of the championship, that they are right back on schedule where they need to be, with Full Gas and FCR behind them too. They know that they've made great progress. They know that they can start chumping down and saying, this is what I can do, out through the chase, and now looking for just Murray's corners to go. It is going to be a massive result for Team Endurotech, with Murray's awaiting a big win for the 5, and they will start eating down on that championship gap. It will be a long wait for Full Gas Motorsports Green in 2nd place, and bonus points aside with them in 2nd, they should take the championship lead.
Absolutely, and look how happy it's with. Oh my goodness. Well, let's go to Adrian Fernandez Centurion, who's doing absolutely amazing stuff there with a 2nd position. Look how happy he is with that. And Oliver Roskvith, 2 big scares he had, but still on the podium for him with a 3rd position. And then we have to wait for Raymond Denit, who has done also nothing wrong, I would say, as we get a lot of smoke here for the car of Connor Franson, who's very, very happy with that. And then it's just the waiting game now for Liam the Cock, as he is now on his final corner going on, and he's doing a great job with a 3rd position. And look how happy he is with that, Jake.
Yeah, you take that 6th place after starting the day in 12th. That is a big day for Liam and the Irekanu by Velocity Racing team. The last couple of runners need to find the line, so that will be Gardigo Racing and Gustavo Stefano 1 lap down, they cross, and then finally for Schlievlak Racing 023 then, and Mitchell von der Drift, who will now make his way through the chase and head over towards the line. A couple laps down on the 2 laps down on your overall winner, but the Irekanu by Velocity team then will be in that 10th place and holding themselves steady. So von der Drift crosses the line, and that is everybody secured. So let's get confirmation of result. 3 hours and 13 seconds only needed for Team Endurotech to endure and hold, but they had to earn that gap. 25 seconds doesn't tell the whole story. Full Gas Motorsports Green will finish off in 2nd, with FCR Simsport in 3rd, and Unlucky with the Who's Racing will be in 4th overall. You've then got FCR Simsport Team 2, the 7, finding themselves in 5th on a day where they just didn't have the pace to match those of the front 4. Irekanu by Velocity Racing 127 will take a big 6th and will be the last cars on the leading lap. Picabello with a 595, very aggressive early on. They'll get 7th ahead of Hype Racing in 8th, and Gardigo Racing will finish off in 9th ahead of Irekano by Velocity Racing in 10th. There'll be 2 laps down also for Schlievlak Racing 023 in 11th, with the Turbo Toaster, the last finishers in this race. 6 laps down, but with the spirit of endurance, they endured and made sure they got that finish. No finishes for NXTGP for Team Ross Young, who had a huge hit. The Donk Racing team and the Corvette having their troubles too, as well as Sahara XGT Motorsports making up this field then, and the securities of the troubles that were had in the early goings of racing. But Dennis, it has to be said, a wonderful bit of racing action that we have had here today at Mount Panorama. In 3 hours here, it's felt like a sprint for this championship, but they are settled in for a much bigger enduro next time out.
Absolutely, as you said, it felt like almost 30 minutes race instead of 3 hours race, but it was an amazing race, and I'm so happy you did the commentary together with me, Jake. Thank you very much for that. And as you said, we're back at the November 8th for what might be a little bit changed, because it still says 12 hours of Spa, but it might be reduced to a 6-hour Spa. But anywho, it's still a legendary track we race on, and it's going to be a legendary race, I know for sure. So yeah, Jake, thank you very much. You want to do commentary here, and I hope we're gonna hear more from you here soon at NXTGP.
Well, that we can so certainly hope to hear from, but here with NXTGP iRacing here on YouTube, some wonderful racing that we have had in play, a day of making progress. This an important round in the championship at round 2 to just steady the ship on what went wrong in round number 1, to get yourself back in line, to say this is where you get ultimate racing action. It was a case for unlucky with who's that they're going to have to play the limitation card. They know that when they go over to the Belgian Ardennes in the Spa-Francorchamps, they are going to be looking over their shoulders. Full gas with back-to-back seconds, but critically, Team Endurotech have announced themselves on the scene here of NXTGP. They are the ones who are now going to start chasing, and we will see you in just a few weeks' time for racing action at Spa.